Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna da Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube. And the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the world of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft, and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this much anticipated Table Talk here. Welcome to my home, welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host because tonight we are going to go into Arcane, which is a favorite among this whole community. Everybody's been talking about how fantastic it is, and so we're going to be talking about Arcane tonight. I only watched it for the first time over like yesterday and the weekend. I did it. I basically binge watched it. I loved it for the first time. People have been talking about how amazing it is, including people like Brianna telling me who I needed to go and watch it. Hey, Brianna.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome. So Brianna's on the show with us, and then also Doug. Welcome, Doug.
Hey. How's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah, I hope everybody is doing great. I am doing great. Very busy, but doing great. This one is, like I said, much anticipated among the entire community. So,
no pressure, guys. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. We were chatting before the stream started about like, how do we even possibly want to approach this?
Well, what's interesting is Shari Lee was asking to take bets on how long the stream will be. I figure hour tops, maybe an hour.
The idea is that we're not going to explore everything we possibly could. Let's just put it that way. We're going to talk about some things, and then we're going to end up not talking about a lot of things.
Yeah, well, I think we all agree Arcane as a story, as a 6.5-hour story, is rich enough to where we could do thousands of episodes and probably still not run out of topics. It's that rich.
There is a YouTuber I recommend. Oh, I forget what his name is. Snee or something. Wait, I wrote it down. Wait, where did I write this down? Yeah, it's Snee, I think. SCHNEE. He's done a whole bunch of videos about yes, that guy exactly. About this show, and they're really good. I do recommend them.
All right, Brianna, you want to be the first to introduce yourself?
I suppose. So I'm Brianna. Is something supposed to be showing up? Because it's not. Oh, there it goes. I'm a writer-director. I have a novel, City of Reckoning, which is a big epic fantasy book about. It actually has a lot of similar themes to Arcane, actually. And it's about a group of teenagers who get caught up in a war and then begin to wonder if they're fighting for the wrong side. And I'm super into dark fantasy and horror and the like.
Well, maybe this guy sounds like he's our kind of person then.
Well, I clicked on one of his videos earlier today, and he has 10.5 hours of analysis. But if you slow his speaking down to a normal person's, it's probably 33 hours of analysis. He's brilliant, though. His analysis I
got a lot out of.
Great.
I watched his like a year ago, I think. Not all of them, but I watched maybe 3 of them.
All right. Well, Druden Fuzz has a request right here. As long as you talk about Violin and how real that felt to see the sapphic relationship with a breakup before they even got together. All right. On you, Brianna. All right, Doug, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Douglas A. Burton, and I'm the author of Faraway Bird. Looks like I got another. It was 190 last time. Now it's 191. Hopefully it went up, not down. Anyway. I'm the author. It's a historical fiction novel called Faraway Bird. It's about Byzantine Empress Theodora. I'm currently working on the sequel to that, and it's coming out really good so far. So I'm starting to get excited about the continuation of this story. And also, I have just finished a nonfiction book called The Heroine's Labyrinth, which discusses archetypal designs in heroine-led fiction. And you'll be happy to know that Vi and Powder show up in that book as well. In fact, after rewatching Arcane, I wish I even spent more time talking about them in that book. So anyway, that book, The Heroine's Labyrinth, comes out in February 2024. Can't wait.
All right. And I am Heath, and my latest project right here is The Trial of St. Gabriel. This is coming out to Kickstarter here. This is, let me get the link here. So The Trial of St. Gabriel, this is a short story that both Brianna and Doug have beta read. It is a dark short story about the Christmas massacre in Bethlehem, which is not a part of the Christmas story that people often address, but it's there. In fact, most of the time when your happy-go-lucky Christmas stories that you get from Walmart end before you get to the massacre, but mine does not. Mine takes it straight on. So The Trial of St. Gabriel, click the link right there. Probably, I'm not sure when. I just was getting together some marketing stuff and was putting some stuff out today. So maybe a week and a half, something like that. We'll bring out this and launch on Kickstarter. Please click that link and then click the notify me on launch.
And then this Christmas Eve, you can have a hot cocoa, bring your kids in the room, and read them about the massacre.
Read about the Christmas massacre. Exactly. We are dual streaming. See, this right here is the Table Talk stream. So I want to put that out here. If you are to the Table Talk channel, if you are on Heath's Geekverse, because I'm dual streaming between Heath's Geekverse and Table Talk, but if you are watching on Heath's Geekverse, please do click the link right there and come over to this channel, the Table Talk channel, help us get our watch hours up so we can start to monetize the Table Talk channel. That would be fantastic. But on the other hand, we are streaming over, simultaneously streaming over on Heath's Geekverse, and we can take super chats over there on that side. So I'll put super chats, so they'll come in. Super chats on Heath's Geekverse. So if you need to send a super chat, there's a direction you want to take the conversation with Arcane, because there is so much to talk about, we can take super chats over on the Heath's Geekverse. Hopefully soon we'll get monetized over on the Table Talk channel, which is great. I mean, it's great because I think having a dedicated channel to Table Talk has really been great because it's very well branded and that's working well. But hopefully we'll be able to get monetized on that soon so we can take.
And my room kind of matches the branding today, so
you are matching the branding.
Yeah,
The blue.
that's entirely why I did it. That's not why.
Oh, you should have just said it was.
And please do wherever you are, please do like the stream. And that's not just a vanity thing because there are people. If you like the stream here, then YouTube knows that people like the stream, and then we'll recommend it to people who are like subscribed. Because I was hearing that in comments over the past few weeks that like people were wondering, where are you, Heath? I'm like, well, I'm always here. So there are people who are subscribed but are not seeing our streams. And that may be because the algorithm isn't showing it to them. So if you like the stream, if you're here and you are enjoying it, hit like. So it's not just a vanity thing on my part, but you're letting YouTube know that other people who are subscribed and might really want to be here tonight and be in on the conversation, but aren't seeing it, you'll help them see the stream. So please do like it.
Yep.
Now, actually, I played up. Drudenfuzz says there was no massacre there since the whole birth narrative of Jesus was a retelling of Moses. I played up the association of Moses because that's a St. Matthew thing. So I actually played up the association of Jesus and Joseph. We'll talk about that later. Moses and Jesus, excuse me. I played up that association even further than St. Matthew does. All right. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the Christmas story itself. That's actually on the docket to talk about later.
Yes. We're going to talk about all of our stories eventually.
We're going to talk about all of our stories. Yes. So get our books because go ahead and get them because
That's
the
the only
stack is
reason
like
why,
this
you know.
small
Just so you
to
can
read through. All right. Brianna, so my perspective on this is those things. I only have watched it for the first time over the past few days. I binge watched it. I watched the first episode last week, then binge watched all of it yesterday, and then rewatched episode 1 right before we started here. And I was just letting it wash over me. I think that's the term Doug used, and just really enjoying it. So my perspective is somebody who has just watched it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Brianna, you've got a lot of notes and topics and things like that. So do you want to get us started and lead the conversation? Sure.
So compared to Heath, I watched it for the first time. I guess it wasn't when it came out, but it was probably a year ago or so. And then I watched it again, like over this past week, and watched like half of it today. So it's very fresh in my mind. Oh God. Okay. Where to start? We already talked about this notes. I guess just in general, I would love to just like give some general praise to it and why I love it so much. I think anyone that is a storyteller will know what I'm talking about, but there's a phenomenon that you often experience where it's like, there's all these other stories out there that you really like, but you're always closest to your own stories. You know, it's like, cause they're coming from your soul. They're like, you know, they're personal. It's been exceedingly rare that I've experienced another story that I felt that closeness to, that I only feel with my own fiction. There's been 3 examples where I've had that happen. And this show is one of them, where I just feel so connected with it. And like to the point where I really didn't even want to analyze it because when I'm watching it, I just want to experience it. I just want to enjoy it. That part of my brain just doesn't even want to turn on. It only really did like in the last hour of me watching it today. So yeah, I for me personally, I also just like, I really connect with Vi. As a fellow dyed shaved girl, masculine lesbian with slight anger problems, you know, but also she's a big sister, which I also am too. I know there's a lot of things in the story that are just so like, just really resonate with. And yeah, well, why don't you say a few things first, Doug, before I like start getting into it?
Well, I'm actually probably closer in line with where Brianna's at. I watched it about a year and a half ago and was blown away by it. I was just sucked into it. I binged it on accident. I just couldn't stop watching it. I was enamored with the animation and the characters, and I just sucked it all in. And then when we had discussed a long time ago, we threw it out there to discuss Arcane. A while ago, because it was about 6 months ago that I rewatched it, and that time I watched it and it with a little bit more appreciation of it, and really because I asked myself, I was like, what's the plot of Arcane? And I was like, oh, geez. I was like, I don't know if I remember all. It was so complex. I was like, it's silly for me to try to remember it all. So I rewatched it and liked it. And then we hadn't done a stream on it until now. So I rewatched it again over the last couple of days. In fact, over the last week, I watched about 2 episodes a night, really took some notes, and just absolutely admired everything about this show. In fact, it's one of the few shows that for me is a 10 out of 10 in just about every category I could think of to add a metric to. The animation, the dialogue, the writing, the character development, the character arcs, the music. Not only, I'm a huge guy for music scores. I have a huge collection of soundtrack music. I love it. I write with it. This has a beautiful score, but it also has a great soundtrack with various artists, which normally I could take that. I throw it to the side. I don't usually care about the various, except for Arcane. I love, and the way the songs are used in the show actually help tell a story. Like those songs are chosen very specifically. So anyway, I've seen it 3 times over the last, I think over a 2-year period. And I love it. And I saw Sable Phoenix say that he saw it 6 times and he's still picking up things. Yeah, I bet you can watch it 12 times and come nowhere close to mining down into this thing to find themes and stories and comparisons and contrasts. I feel like you could just pick, it's like a flashlight. You could just wave it at anything in the room, and that is a 3-hour discussion, like anywhere you want in Arcane. It's that well packed.
Yeah, some of the history behind it is interesting because I was watching like behind the scenes stuff, and it was definitely one of those things that it was an iterative process, because I think when they first started working on the show, it was not working. Like the story was not working, and the people that were originally leading it there. So like within the League of Legends company, there are people that wanted to do like a show. I'll get back to that in a second because there's some interesting history there too. And so they started leading it, and they're like, okay, this is like we're a little out of our depth. So they actually brought in some professional, story consultants, screenwriter type people from Hollywood that then came in. I think it was one main woman that came in, and I think there might have been several others that then came and just like made it, so much more in depth. But on the note of music, so I got to share this backstory to people that don't know it. There's a reason why Imagine Dragons does the theme song, and why they I don't know if you guys noticed, but they show up at one point. You see the Imagine.
Oh my God!
It's actually an in-universe song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like a music video in that world.
So the reason for that is, of course, League of Legends is a game, and for the longest time, that's all they were.
Well, not of course. I didn't know.
And it's like one of those types of games where you're like, how do you call that? I forget what you call that. It's a third person where you're like up above, and the little characters, you play as the characters. You can play as little Jinx going around throwing her bombs or whatever. And you're like, it's like one of those kinds of fantasy games. And this happened back when I was in college. And I remember when this happened, League of Legends released for the first time a animated music video. And so they have these like yearly, I think they're yearly championships where people, people play the game, and they like throughout the world, and they have these massive championships, and you can win them, and they're super big. And it was called Warriors, and it was done by Imagine Dragons, and it was so cool. And because I was in college, and so I was friends with a lot of game people, like video game people in college, and so that's how I saw this, because I knew people that were in that kind of world, that type of geekdom. And I remember being obsessed with this when it came out. It was just so cool. I highly recommend looking. The animation now is a little outdated, but it was like, it just pumps you up. Like it's great Imagine Dragons video, but also the animation had a storytelling in it, and that was the thing that was really cool. And they were partnering with this animation studio out in France. I think, I forget what their name is. They're really kind of a small indie company at the time, and people really loved it. They really reacted to it. So the League of Legends company was like, all right, let's do another one. And so they continued to do this over the years, where they would do these little music videos. Some of them were just going in on a character. So kind of like showing that character story. There's a Jinx one, and that actually isn't also an in-universe song in the show. Get Jinxed, I think is what it's called, but you see her listening to it. Jinx is at one point she's listening to that actual song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And but they do it's a part that if you know it, you get the reference. If you don't, you can't tell that it's about her. But and they were so good. Like I genuinely as a filmmaker am really inspired, have found direct inspiration from some of these videos, because they're like they're just really good, like storytelling, really cool like film language that's being used. I always like feel very moved by them. And people kept saying, you need to make a show. Their fans were like, you need to take this to the next level. You need to make a show out of this. And so finally, after a long time, like they started to do it, and it took a long time for them to finally do it. And then they created Arcane, which of course went far beyond any of the kind of storytelling that they had done before. And so of course, what started it all was Imagine Dragons. So of course, Imagine Dragons had to be the theme song and had to be in it. So that is some of the backstory.
Well, a real quiet aside that I think is interesting about Imagine Dragons is it's a mainstream song. This is not some obscure song they dug up and put in here, or it wasn't just written for, like, this is a well-known song. And my kids love that song and did. And so I remember
Are you sure it wasn't written for this show?
But no, I'm not sure.
I think it is.
Someone in the chat will know. I'll be right back. I'm logging out and logging back in.
Okay.
Right,
I'm assuming Brianna. I because it was so mainstream, I assumed it had been written prior and then.
Yeah, but Imagine Dragons has written 2 songs for them before.
Okay. So yeah, I'm not gonna argue it because I certainly don't know myself, but I assumed it. My main point was that it was a well-known song in the mainstream, like very mainstream. Yeah, and my son, who I think he was 10 when we watched it the first time, he was like, "Oh man, this show has Imagine Dragons!" Like he was so into it when he heard the Imagine. And he and I sat down and watched the whole thing. So it's one of the few shows that I sat down and watched all of. I think Cobra Kai and Arcane that I watched all the episodes with my oldest son anyway. And Cobra Kai is another one with really good storytelling and good, but I think Arcane is better and better decisively.
Is everything working now, Heath?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a better connection, so I think I'm okay as long as you see me.
Yeah, that was what Sable was saying was the other thing I was going to say. Yeah, they have their own, so they now have their own music studio.
Interesting.
In so their game company, and now they're storytelling. So like they still partner. That's the same animation studio from all those years ago that they hired to do Arcane, which is now grown. And then they have their own. They're like officially a music production company too, because all that music is
It's amazing when you have a great story at the core, how many boats rise with that, like Star Wars with ILM and Skywalker sound, like all this stuff comes together and it all seems to elevate. It's one of those rare cases. I think of it like, for a storyteller, you have this idea and you're running. And of course, this was multiple writers, but it's like the storytellers are running out there and they're racing and they're going, and you look to your left and you got your animators right there with you. You got your musicians, right? Everybody crossed that bridge there, and they all did so at such a high level. And it's just a beautiful thing when it all comes together. It's also one of the few shows that I've never met or heard anybody say they didn't like this show.
Yes.
How rare is that today?
I'll go, and I want to come back to that note when it comes to diversity too. But let's come back to that later. Wait, oh damn it, there was something you said that just triggered a thought, and I don't remember what it was. It's like, I was gonna say, one of the other things that this show basically accomplishes is that, like I said, in the League of Legends game, you just have these little, like, you play as all these different characters, like all the main characters, all the major characters in this story, in this show are characters you can play in the game. And it's basically like their backstories as a kind of functionally what this became. Like, how did this person become this? And one of the moments that's really cool, if you're a little bit aware of that world, is like that moment when Jace and Vi are fighting together, when they go back to back and you have the circle around them, and she's got her big, punching things, and he's got his axe. They have just become the video game versions of themselves, is what happened in the moment. Like they're dressed the way they are, and they have the weapons that they have. And so that's kind of like a cool moment. Of course, Powder becoming Jinx is that, of course, too. Like how, because none of that's explained. It's just these characters. Like, okay, how does this person become this, crazy, chaotic character? Like what causes someone to become that? And so that has brought up the question that what the story is about. And I think it was Schnee or some other person on YouTube that first said this, that it's about change. And I'm wondering if you guys agree with this, because I
do. I wrote one of my notes is I think Vi's Sacred Fire is change, and I think change by force, specifically violent change, not passive change. I think that's part of Vi's Sacred Fire. Even her name,
it's
Violet,
in every single character too.
What's that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, I was saying even her name Violet is almost a play off the word violence.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
And she has a tattoo of a Roman numeral 6, and I looked it up. The 6th commandment is "Thou shalt not kill," which seems to be like a warning about violent change, possibly an inevitable occurrence in violent change is that people are going to be killed in this. So I think that is her sacred fire, revolution in a more succinct word. And I think, like I said, I think her name is a direct play on that.
Yeah, that's a good note, Sable. Like she is the one that you see the most that is resistant to change. But whereas like the world is changing all around her. And yes, but there's so many different, like each character is dealing with it in different ways. You have what's his name, Heimendinger or whatever, that's afraid of change because he has his trauma in the past, things that he's afraid of. He's kind of like the old fool as opposed to the old mentor. It's like
he's a little detached.
But it's complicated because there's some wisdom in what he's saying too. That some of the other characters run into, but like there's progress. Hear the word progress all the time about wanting to bring things to a new future. But is it better, and what cost are you willing to take to get there? So it does seem like change is like permeated throughout the whole thing. You start off with these characters that are younger, and then 7 years pass, and then the worlds that they're in are changed. It's just like this constant.
Well, I just want to make one note on what Sable's saying. I'm talking about external change. Violet is a catalyst for external change, and I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more of that in season 2. But on a personal level, I feel like her effort or her resistance to personal change is really out of a sense of responsibility. I have a sense that she's trying to keep things at a certain level, the same way Vander did. He became kind of a pacifist by the time we meet him in episode 1. Trying same thing on a responsible level, trying to prevent violent outbreaks or disruption to the system. So I think Vi's got some of that sense of responsibility in her throughout all 9 episodes.
James has put in an 8-month super chat as a member of the Heath's Geekverse channel for 8 months. Thank you, James. So James, his 8-month super chat says, "Can we start on theming? I think theming is crucial. It informs the entirety of the plot, and it's a big arrow that points the right way. Points the way. So, what are your thoughts on that, James? Put that in there. Oh, so is this what you're saying? Duality, inevitability.
Duality, I think, is certainly I mean, there's multiple themes, and all of them.
Right. There's a lot of minor themes too, of course.
Right, and all of them are handled excellently. One of the things I'll say from the Heroine's Labyrinth perspective, and I don't think I've ever seen a story like this yet. I'm sure if I look, I'll find more. What I think is a subversion of of an archetypal theme in the Heroine's Labyrinth, and in this case, it's so spectacularly done that it's driving the entire story. In the Heroine's Labyrinth, one of the main themes is a lot of heroines will encounter a fragile power, and they entrust that fragile power, which elevates the fragile power. And they become critical at a key point near the end of the story, usually the climax. Like Princess Leia entrusting R2-D2 or Ripley with Newt. Like there's all sorts of examples where heroines have a fragile power. In this case, the heroine gives up on the fragile power, which is Powder. Funny enough, her name is almost sounds like Power. She gives up on her. She kind of walks away or abandons her at obviously a very critical moment. And this sets the entire story in motion. And I would say the relationship between Vi and Powder is this story. Yeah. Even these other elements that are coming in that are shaping the story, I think the core of it is the relationship between Vi and Powder. So here we have an example.
And how that relationship changes. Yes.
And how it changes for sure. Yeah. The heroine, in this case, Vi, and her fragile power that the heroine usually entrusts and holds on to and bets on, Vi doesn't do that in this. And it changes the course of events in this entire world. She gives up on her.
What happens if you don't embrace the fragile power?
When the heroine rejects the fragile power.
Rejection.
And that's what happens here. And it is, you see the power when the archetype is broken or subverted like that, the pieces don't go together, and the characters can't get over it. The characters don't ever really get over this and are still trying to solve it near the end. Even in the final shot, that was not democratically agreed on by the sisters, what Powder or Jinx ends up doing at that time. So one of the other themes, and I'll keep this brief, along that front, why Vi gave up on her, a theme I hadn't heard. I watched like same as Brianna, like 3 other videos from that one guy talking about Arcane. I hadn't heard him talk about this, but Powder, her sacred fire seems to be the love of her sister, which is destroyed in this show. And it's tough to watch in almost every scene that she's dealing with it. That seems to be her sacred fire because it seems to be the thing she cares about the most. And what's interesting is that she expresses herself in randomness. And I would love to discuss this further, maybe not right this minute, but her expression of randomness is so consistent as Powder. And then the light side, which is mistakes, misfires, accidents, misfortune, is Powder. And I even think her name Powder, I think of like gunpowder or a powder keg.
A powder keg, yeah.
That's the thing that could blow up. So instead of the fragile power rising to save the day in the end of the story, this fragile power explodes, which is also a form of chaos and randomness, which Jinx and Powder both exemplify the light side of randomness and the dark side of randomness.
James, for $10. Thank you very much for the $10 super chat, James. James says, the show asks all characters, who are you willing to sacrifice? Who are you willing to sacrifice for what you want? Except for Vi, who reverses it to, what are you willing to sacrifice for who you want? Oh, let's talk about that.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Interesting. It does seem like a lot of the other characters are, what would you say, have impersonal goals or impersonal ambitions. I shouldn't say impersonal, but not relationship goals. They seem to be worldly goals, whereas Vi is very clearly a person. She, in a couple areas, her goals seem to be relationship based. Kate is another one.
It's the two different girls, her sister and then the love interest, that are both like at odds. And she doesn't want them to be at odds. She wants to be able to have both of the things, both of the people that she wants in her life. And yeah, that's interesting. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know why I started any sentence.
Well, I was going to say, so who, but I'll have to think more about the Vi. But thinking about episode 1, but on that main question, that really is asked. That is something that Vander is talking to Vi about in episode 1, at least, it seemed to me, because that's the one that I've watched twice, because he's definitely saying, like, who are you willing to sacrifice for what you want? Well, he's asking that question of her, that your team is going to follow you, whatever you say they're going to do, wherever you take them, they're going to go. But then before that, he was like, well, I don't remember the exact words, but basically, like, you're going to do this, but are you going to get these guys killed? Are you going to get your team killed for the glory or the mission or whatever that was? So that was a who are you willing to sacrifice? Because that was one of the questions, and I think that does come up again in the context of war. I think, like I said, I've only watched.
Yeah, war is another war is another theme.
Yeah, I want X, but what if it costs the lives of these two guys?
Right.
Who are your friends? Like, are you willing to let these two guys die for what you want?
Well, in most major conflicts, especially in warfare, a lot of military leaders, you have to become comfortable with that on some level. Like, you don't want to be wasteful, but you don't want to be overly protective. There's 1,000 cases in war throughout history where you have a military commander that's so protective of his unit that he becomes ineffective. And then other times where you have military commanders that are so reckless that they needlessly slaughter their entire regiment in a doomed charge, for example. So you have to be able to be willing to let people go, as well as be a force of action, military.
Well, that's if you're already at war, though, because nobody is at war.
But I think Xander's preparing her for that.
Because the question is, are you willing to even be at that point at all? Like, do we need to go to war?
Right. Do you think that he's preparing her for a leadership role where death is possible?
Well, he has become more of a pacifist at this point. So he's trying, and she has that, that nature where she wants to solve everything with her fists, right? Like, that's how she wants to solve every problem. And so he's trying to help, maybe ineffectively in some cases, but he's trying to help her, I guess, rein in some of that and have some wisdom. Because if you're just going in, fist flying all the time, yeah, people are going to get hurt needlessly. And so that's one of the things that she needs to learn as a character. I'm not sure that she ever actually does, at least not in this season, that like, you can't solve every problem that way. And that, like, you have to, you have to have some, what's the word, like a negotiation sometimes, and you have to work things out peacefully. That's very much not her personality. And she doesn't really learn that lesson.
Well, I don't think that. Yeah, I think you're right. It's just not her personality. Not everyone can do both. That's actually tough.
Oh, I think if you're a healthy person, you should be able to do both. I don't know if I agree with that.
Somebody up and then negotiate after.
Try not to beat them up in the first place.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, I think most people have that skill, but a lot of people are not quick to physical confrontation, especially in modern society. We've almost labeled that toxic. So to have someone who is willing to go into physical, like a physical fight like that, boom, let's go, let's do this, let's solve this now, and have the ability to be diplomatic. I think those two qualities are rare in a single person. That's why some of the best generals are so rare, because they can do both.
There's this
Sable Phoenix, remember, for 5 months. So Sable Phoenix sent in a 5-month super chat right here. Thank you so much, Sable, for being around. You're a huge part of this, incredible part of this.
Sable's awesome.
Yes. Sable says, yes, themes. I'm very interested to know what everyone thinks is the core underlying question at the core of the show, and nearly every character is. I've been sitting here trying to think about that as people were talking about that, because I was thinking, well, you've got the Vi Powder line, but then you also have the Jace line of the story. And so if this is done correctly, which it must be, because we all love it, so it seems like it must have been done correctly. It seems like when you're trying to weave together different stories like this, that they're done thematically, that they're addressing the same core.
Yeah, intuitively, it feels like it is.
So we must be looking for something that is overarching the Undercity and the Undercity characters and the Overcity, or the Overcity characters.
What's it called?
Zahn and Piltover.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I even thought when I was writing the word Piltover, it was interesting because it sounds like built over, like I built over the poor district. I couldn't find a connection with Zahn, but Piltover seemed like a perfect name for that. The city above, and then the Undercity is Zahn, which will become, I guess, the nation of Zahn. But if I had to pick a core theme, it is absolutely, in my opinion, the relationship between Vi and Powder. The movie the show starts with them, and the show ends with them. And
I know, but whatever theme they're dealing with should be present in the other characters.
Yeah, he's saying, like, what's the underlying question? Like, if you were to say, like we said, change the theme, but like, how would you put that as a question that is being asked with each.
Well, what do you
character.
hold sacred at a time where nothing is sacred? You know, in conflicts where you have the rich living above, the poor living below, Shimmer is dehumanizing. You know, what do you hold sacred under these conditions, which are incredible? Well, honestly, they're terrible conditions in season 1, and I have a feeling that the war is going to begin in season 2,
Worse,
and it's going to get even worse. So, you know, every character is trying to hold on to something sacred. You know, Jace has his vision, and he slowly starts to move in a different direction. Heimdinger has his legacy, and he starts getting pushed out. Vi thinks she can hold it together, and she does not. Jinx seems to be almost like a tragic character in this. Anyway,
there is a question. I don't know if they're all asking this, but I am recognizing a question that is certainly one of the fundamental ones here. And it has something to do with, you know, when you are mistreated, like especially in like class different situations or just from bullies, maybe, what is the correct response to that? I wonder if that's one of the, that's certainly one of the questions. Because there's a lot of, you know, well,
even like, Mel is abandoned by her mother.
Yeah, this is explored a lot in dialogue about like, oh, you know, you topsiders are all the same. Oh, well, we can still work something out. We're oil and water. You know, like that was that conversation. There's a lot about like talking about what should we do, and then the consequences, and then people make actions, and then there are consequences to those actions, and they're seeing like the complexity of, you know, action and inaction, and then also just all of the hurt, all the different ways that all these people have been hurt by each other, and how do you solve that and have a sense of peace and a sense of like restitution without continuing the cycle of violence. And it seems to me like this overarching season is a tragic one because they come close, like they come so close, you know, to maybe making things better, but it's too late. It's too late. Like so many of the things that have gone wrong, the consequences and the ripple effects of them have already been set in motion. And so Jinx, you know, sending that weapon up into the sky is that moment of it's too late, and the cycle of violence is just continuing. Like I feel like this whole thing is like people trying to not continue the cycle of violence. Some people are trying to stop the cycle of violence. Some people are trying to continue it because they feel like that's what they want. They think if you know, if I strike back, then it'll all be good. Then it's like, do you strike back, or does that just make it worse, and does it keep going? It seems to me like this story is saying, yes, if you strike back, things just keep getting worse and worse. But finding a solution and changing for the better is never an easy. It's not something that's as easy as let's just all hold hands and sing together. It's like it's complicated, and there's costs to any choice that you make in a situation like that, which is so hard. I think that's why it resonates, because it's so human. Like this is a fictional world, but we're all invested in it because all of these moral situations that these characters are in are ones that like we as humans have experienced again and again and again and again and again for thousands of years.
Well, I agree. I think that holding something sacred or making moral decisions under violent conditions, this seems to be a theme that stretches through every episode in the show. Even Silco, you know, he was being drowned when he was kind of reborn as Silco. You know, Vander's the one that is trying not to be the violent one. He's trying to keep the peace, you know, hold that steady.
You're right.
Although he had to change at the very end of his life. He had to use violence at the end.
Yeah. Well, all these characters do well. And I thought about, you know, the root, and I've never played the video games. I knew nothing about them. I just watched the show. The show is based on combat, you know, or the video game. It's based on combat.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost as if they decided, well, if we're going to tell a story about warriors and combat scenarios, what's their relationship to violence and their own moral compass on things? You know, what is it they do think is sacred? And what I mean by that is morality. You know, if you think something is sacred, then that should be the right. And then these opposite would be the wrong. And every character is trying to navigate that to some extent, I think, you know.
Yeah, I was trying. I like this idea of it's either oppression or how do you respond when you've been done wrong?
Yeah,
because that is something that's present in both the Undercity and Piltover storylines. Mm-hmm. So even though you've got the rich people that are up in Piltover, Jace, people are doing him wrong. The guy who's the who's Jace's accomplice with the
Victor.
Victor. Victor is experiencing that. What happens when you're done wrong? The woman who is the over counselor, she's been done wrong by her mother. So I think that we might be onto something there, that that all of these characters are dealing with something about what happens when you've been done wrong.
That's
and
cool.
How do you deal with that?
I just realized that's one of the reasons why I think I like this show so much. That's the exact same moral question at the core of my novel. It's the exact same one. Yeah.
Well, even like Jace, though, you know, his issue is he brought hex tech out there, and it can be weaponized, and people know that. So there's like this dangerous other side. So, and you know what's interesting in hero's journey stories, when I write about the sacred fire, it's the idea that, and it's not the same usually in heroine-centric stories. It's a little different in the male warrior-oriented, I shouldn't even say male, just the warrior-oriented story. It tends to be about the use of force. You know, the light side of the force versus the dark side of the force. You know, Jedis are guardians of peace and justice. You know, we're not soldiers. And Karate Kid, you can either become Miyagi-Do or you can become Cobra Kai. You know, it's the idea of the ethics of force that seems to be heavily in the warrior genre. And what's interesting is structurally, this is absolutely a heroine's labyrinth structure, except the ethics seem to be more warrior oriented. So it really has elements from both the heroine's labyrinth and the hero's journey. And I would say more heroine's labyrinth, but it maintains a warrior ethos throughout in weird areas. Like even the scientist is like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, but it has this idea that the scientist, you know, the geeky tweed wearing, you know, pencil pusher is about to pencil something in that's going to kill, you know, 300,000 people in Nagasaki. You know, his invention becomes destructive. And I think that's even a theme in Star Trek too. You know, scientists have always been pawns of the military, you know, you know, the Genesis torpedo. So it's weird to have these warrior ethos themes so heavily present in a heroine's labyrinth story. One that does do that is Kill Bill. Kill Bill has a little bit of that as well. She's clearly a warrior-oriented ethos character, but following a heroine's labyrinth model.
Yeah, and the fact that that's so much about society and like improving it or changing it, and like that feels very heroine typical as well, feminine, I suppose.
Let me look at a couple of,
even though it is very much about violence. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Sable says Jinx Sacred Fire is total freedom from all control. That's why Silco never tries to control her, no matter how wild she is. He thinks she's perfect. I remember that he says you're perfect, right? Because she sees her as Zaun incarnate. And then James says, I think Jinx wants validation. Oh, I think definitely yes. That's why
she wants validation, but so does Vi. She just doesn't need it as much, as overtly. I actually might disagree with you, Sable, when I'm running this through my mind. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm thinking this through out loud. I don't know if her sacred fire is I think her sacred fire is the love of her sister. But that's been damaged. And it's been damaged in a way that seems irreconcilable. Silco never tries to replace her sister as someone who loves her and tries to control her with love. He's very much, believe it or not, this is usually a feature of the Beast as ally versus the Masked Minotaur, where the Beast honors the hero in sacred fire rather than trying to control it. So your point actually suggests that Silco does love her by not trying to control her. He actually is very consistent along those lines. And I think it's part of the thing that make us, the viewer, a little mixed with Silco. He seems to be very fair to Jinx, where the world has not, and yet he's supposed to be the villain. So, you know, I'm not.
Every single character is,
but that's perfect.
Complex. It's so
What's
great.
that?
I was saying, just we'll come back to this, but just how every single character is complex, and they have positive and negative traits is great.
James also says,
yes.
I think Jinx wants validation. We just mentioned that. It's why she chooses the finality of inhabiting the Jinx persona after Silco approves of her right before she dies. Right. She's having trouble. She's having trouble getting that from her team in the very beginning.
But I think
Yes.
Jinx is a great name, by the way. It's perfect for her. Is the dark manifestation of randomness, which is what she embodies. Remember, in the beginning, she's the one who accidentally knocks over the blue crystal that explodes.
That's
It creates
true.
chaos,
Right.
but it was an
Yeah.
accident. You know, when she's cornered by that guy, what does she do with that bag of treasure? She throws it in the river. You know, she doesn't try to escape, which I thought of Moses's mother. She puts Moses in the river. A lot of heroines trust the chaos of nature as a potential like neutral helping force. Even Ripley, when she's fighting the Queen Alien, she unleashes the vacuum of space that create chaos, which is helpful. Certain heroines trust in randomness in a certain way, and Powder does this all the time. I think when she is abandoned by her sister,
Or she thinks she's abandoned.
well, exactly. But when that rift begins, when that
Right.
pain is created, that wound, that trauma,
Mhm.
the randomness of her, which is the way she expresses herself, and it expressed as like accident prone as Powder, becomes the darkest version of it possible, which is chaos, an agent of chaos. And by the way, I've seen several efforts to make these chaotic women characters like Harley Quinn and stuff. Jinx gets it right. And I think Jinx gets it right because she's not doing it to sensationalize chaotic behavior, and they're not doing it to make it entertaining. They really tie in the mental trauma of where it's coming from, and it makes it feel unresolved. And I think that's why we can relate to her. It's not entertaining. It seems tragic every time she's going through this thing. It's not sensationalized.
Yeah, that's another thing which I'll come back to again later. That is very much a decision of the show, because there are some slight differences in like the character designs in the game as opposed to in the show that as all the ones I've noticed are by far improvements from a storytelling perspective. And that's one of them. Like Jinx is a little bit more of a cliche, that kind of an archetype. She feels a little, and she's also a little bit more like sexualized. And in this case, in the show, she's like, it's not like you have the manic pixie dream girl with blue hair cliche. Here it's like she seems like she's that archetype, but she's genuinely like troubled. Like she genuinely needs help, and they changed her design to make her, she's a little bit more youthful, and she's less, so she's not like sexualized. She's still just barely, not a kid. She's basically still a kid. And I just thought all those were good improvements that fit the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking at it from the opposite lens. So I found the game after, I looked it up, and like you, I would see like Jinx, and I'm like, oh, that's not Jinx. Like that, that seems like such a downgrade.
That was just a character that was created for people to play in a game. That wasn't, and then they're like, let's make an actual character, and then all of a sudden you approach it differently.
Well, and what's amazing, I think you're right. She's not really sexualized in the show. And what's interesting is even the way
she dresses super immodestly, but it's not sexual. It's just like just like her being free,
That's that's what I'm saying. Is
like wild, I guess is the word.
Yeah, like her pants are low. You see a lot of skin and body, and she's moving, and she,
They also made her a little more, like, not to get like super into detail about her body, but she's a little more flat chested, which I think helped with that too. And like she has these long braids, which are super impractical and dangerous to fight in, but that's just part of her chaos, of her just being free in her own way, I suppose.
All I'm saying is, and you're probably right, I honestly I think that the writing is so good that even if she wasn't flat chested, I would still identify with her character as not being overtly sexualized, because that's just not what was on my mind watching her character. It just wasn't. And it never got that way, which just speaks volumes to the power of writing behind the characterization of Powder / Jinx.
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating. We're going to have to get to this. Sable says the core question is never explicitly asked in the show proper. One character makes a statement that directly ties to it, though. We're going to have to figure out what that is. There's a lot of stuff going on in the comments.
Yeah, see what is it that Sable said after that?
So Sable's trying to figure out what he thinks the core theme is.
Okay, I think so. Yeah,
I'll give you my theory based on what you're saying that I think ties it together. this is just my theory. Again, I haven't thought this through the way I did like other things, but if Jinx or if Powder's Sacred Fire is the love of her sister, and if I'm right about this, and if Vi's Sacred Fire is the revolution, then by default, Powder supports that and wants to make that happen. So I think any desire for total freedom on Powder's part is tied to the desire for revolution of her older sister. That's what I think. That's what I think that through line might be.
Oh, you think she's going to make it manifest?
Right.
Because
She loves her sister and wants her sister to make it happen. And so she wants freedom in the sense that that's what her sister is after, and she'll help to make it happen. What's the final shot of the show? It's Jinx firing the gemstone.
Right.
James for $5. James for a $5 super chat says, "Oh, this is killing Sable and I. We're typing in both
you
YouTube
guys.
chats and we're
funny.
messaging back and forth in Discord." Oh, really? Oh, there's stuff going on.
And then both YouTube channels, guys. Why are you doing this?
Let me while we're talking here, I'll let you go. I need to put a link to the Discord server. Oh, I accidentally closed my Discord. I'll put a link to the Ravenkeep Discord server in the chat. So yes, we've been having this conversation going on there too. So I'll put that in here in just a moment.
Doing 3 conversations while you listen to ours.
Yeah, I actually predicted there was going to be a bottleneck, that the guys had so much to say in the chat that they would bottleneck because they couldn't type fast enough as our conversation moved past the topic or something, and it was going to drive them nuts. So I see that we are succeeding at driving them nuts. So
I want to bring in another.
If Jinx didn't say, but you changed too at the Mad Tea Party.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Okay. Because so there's a related theme, which is love and how these two characters define love, and everything I'm about to say is not my own idea. I think this was that same YouTuber I mentioned earlier. I think it was his video. If not, it was someone else's. That one way you can look at it is that these two girls are defining love differently. So for Vi, love is, if you love someone, then you're going to want them to be their best self. And you see that like throughout the way that she interacts with, all the younger kids, like, in the beginning, there's a sense of like, she's kind of like she's a big sister, she mentors, she helps, she shows Echo how to throw a punch, and she's trying to help them be their best selves and encourage them, and all this stuff. While what Powder feels like, what love is being accepted exactly the way you are right now. So it's like, I want to, and that's what she wants when she's older. She wants to be accepted exactly as she is.
Unconditional love, yeah.
Right. And that's to her what love means, is you accept who I am now. Whereas Vi is saying, yes, I love you. And because I love you, I want you to be better. Not because it's not a rejection of you as a person. It's me wanting you to be your best self. Right. But that's not what Silco gives. Silco gives the kind of love that
unconditional
that she wants, which is just, you're perfect.
Yes.
Exactly as you are. And so that there's a mysterious line at the end, which I think makes sense with this understanding, when she says, I thought you would love me. I thought maybe you would love me the way you used to, but you've changed too. So here's to us. So she's saying, it's like, I thought you were going to just accept the new person that I am, but like, you're not able to do that.
Well, I think the new Vi is more willing to accept, but I feel like the old Vi is the one that is the problem, because she basically said, "I love you."
Perception, but by the way, that's just, she thinks that she's not being accepting her. But anyway, yeah.
Right. Well, and there's external complications in where these people are in their lives, but you're right. But also, old Vi basically his message was, "I love you, but you're a liability, and I can't accept you because of that." That essentially was the message that Powder took, and Silco, it basically said, "I love you no matter what," and he's so consistent with this. It's beautiful. Even though he's supposed to be the bad guy. And Vi, I think what she means when she's like, "You've changed too," is Vi in the opening heist is reckless enough that Vander has to give her that message of, hey, are you willing to, get these people killed? You need to act responsibly. I think that's the change. Vi becomes more like Vander in that she tries to be more responsible for everybody. And while she's trying to be more responsible, here comes Powder, boom, kills them. So that conflicted with her sense of responsibility, and that's why she's like, Powder, you're out.
Right,
I can't protect people with you around. I can't do it. Which was
her worst moment, in my opinion. Like that was that when I first watched it, that shocked me. She like hit her sister. I was like, what? Like that was by far the lowest point that she was at, and consequences came from that. But you also
she thought she'd done so well.
Right, but it's so great that the show makes you understand each character, that even for her to do something like hit her sister, you still understand why she did that. Like you understand, you don't agree with how she handled that moment, but it's like she's under a lot of stress at that moment. You're like, you understand. And I feel like you feel that for every character, including all the villains. Like you understand why they're doing what they're doing. They're all just treated with that level of like humanity, which is really powerful.
Well, and she kills Silco the same way she killed her friends, by random accident.
Yes,
she's firing randomly when she kills Silco, and she blows up that whole place when she kills a friend. So that is her form of expression, is that randomness. And it could be,
and then she accepts it, right? That's part of why she chooses Jinx. She says, that's who I am. I'm going to make that my strength instead of being
instead of it being a liability, it's going to be my form of attack.
Right.
Unpredictability. I even wrote some of them down. Spontaneity. Where'd I put it? The dark side of it. Anyway, the dark side. Anyway, it's chaos in essence. Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Powder fell down a well. I actually love that line because that sounds more like mental health stress. Like almost like she threw Powder down a well mentally and killed Powder to become Jinx. Almost like the Anakin is dead. That name no longer has any meaning for me.
What was episode 3? I don't remember.
Episode 3. I don't know. I'd have to go through.
This is what Sable's saying.
I would have to say that too.
Well, let me see. Episode 3. The base violence necessary for change.
I thought it was just her. I think it was just her eyes, a close up on her eye. Was it that last shot? No, maybe it was the last shot.
Maybe I can.
Anyway,
see if I can find it later. But
only the clean moment. Yeah, that's true.
Except for, well, yes, she sits in the Jinx chair. She sees the Jinx has the name, and she sits down in that. Yes, sits down claiming that, right? But actually, Sable says she wasn't firing randomly. She specifically shot at Silco when she heard the hammer on her pistol click.
Maybe, but it was also at that moment.
It's a little ambiguous.
Well, because at that moment, I think it's important to recognize what was going on was that Vi does not at all understand the specific type of mental distress that Jinx is under. I'm just calling her Jinx because she called herself that at that moment. But like she's like trying to bring her back to her Powder self, right? And she's like bringing in all the names of these people that are dead, and that's making it worse. Like she's thinking that that's going to like ground her. And instead you see, she's like curled on the ground of all these monsters around her, because those are her schizophrenia monsters. Like those are the ones that like all these people that are dead that
survivor's remorse. Yeah.
Right. That she sees them, especially I forget who it was named. It's one of the boys in particular she's constantly seeing. And so she's in that state of like trying to block all that out because it's making it worse. And then she hears a pistol click and just reacts. So I don't know if she is necessarily like.
I didn't think she killed him on purpose.
I don't think she did. I think it was just a instant reaction. She's in that state, and there's a pistol click. She reacts like she reacts on much less earlier on. She sees someone with pink hair, and then she just blows everything up. It's like it doesn't take much for her to react.
Yeah, my thought was that she was firing randomly and accidentally killed Silco, which makes sense given her chaotic nature. However, there in storytelling, there are times, to Sable's point, where characters do something subconsciously, where it's not entirely an accident. Like, remember that book they made us read in high school? I don't know if you guys had to read it, called A Separate Piece, where the kid shook a tree branch and his friend fell. He did it on purpose, but kind of not for any reason. And his friend fell out and died. And this became a big problem for him. But, part of the struggle was he never remembered deciding to do that. But then there was some part of him that remembered that he did think it, So it was this sort of weird subconscious behavior that led to an extreme outcome. That might be what happened if there's any case that she did it on purpose to Silco. I think it would be along those lines, in my opinion only.
No, that's a fair point. See if I wrote anything else on the notes.
Yeah, Sable, I'm curious what you think what the answer to your question. Remind me the question. I think it was, what is the thing that ties the whole thing together? What is the theme that ties it all together? I'm curious because Sable usually has some really great stuff. Yeah, I have another theory, which I can get to, that deals with the sacred fire aspect. There's always a native culture claim as well, which I think that's what I mean by responsibility. The native culture is represented by Vander. He's the continuity. I think there's even a line in the first episode where like, that's a job Vander would have pulled, which is a signal of continuity. You're like Vander, you're continuing the Vander thing. And Vander says, I think he says at the last drop at some point, protect the family, which is another sacred fire mention. So I think by adopting that message from the continuity message from Vander is what caused her to go into a crisis when loving her sister and protecting the family or protecting the group became at odds. Yeah, PTSD for sure.
She definitely has PTSD, yeah.
Okay, Sable. Yeah, okay, so sounds like Sable thinks she shot him on purpose. I would.
I don't know. It may not have been that she wanted to hurt him, but she wanted to protect her. It's one of those kinds of things. Because she instantly afterwards was pretty horrified that he was dying. So, yeah, it was not a conscious thought, but also wasn't unintentional. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, Sable, where there is an interplay between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I meant from that book, The Separate Piece, where somebody does something not entirely randomly, and yet they didn't officially choose it. It's kind of like this weird space in between where you act impulsively, and something dramatically happens. So, and that's why I brought that up. There's a case I would say for that, for sure. Oh, Heath, are you muted?
Oh, maybe I am. I muted myself and turned off my camera when I stood up, so I didn't.
That's Blade Runner, James. Yeah, I don't have to explain.
Is there anything else to say on theme? Well, if we want to move on to another topic or not.
Oh God, I mean, we could probably talk 5 hours just on theme if we want.
Well, I don't want to do that. Anything else that's burning on your heart?
No, I don't have a point on theme. I was going to say that just as far as the violence and the action and things that happen, I was kind of following that as I was going through, just watching it for the first time. And of course, there is a lot of action and fighting and violence that we were talking about. And as far as I remember, when that happens, it's significant. And I was contrasting that with our discussion, Doug, of Ahsoka, where there can be a lot of fights that come down that will be very flashy with lightsabers and all of that. But there's no result of that fight. I mean, everything at the end of the fight's the same as it was before the fight. Nothing really changed as a result of it. It was just some flashy lightsaber stuff for you to enjoy. Right. That's not the case in this.
Yes. All the fights move things forward. Yes.
The fights always move something forward.
Right. In the warrior trope, when combat is present, in all my old notes, I talk about the way you're going to stylize combat. And it's important because your combat is, in essence, a form of resolution between conflicting forces. And so Star Wars has the lightsabers. That's very stylized combat. It's unforgettable. It's archetypal. It's beautiful. We all want to do it ourselves. The Matrix has the flying kung fu that they do, where they punch through walls and everything. That's stylized combat. Arcane has that. And if you're telling the story properly, if you're serious about a warrior trope, all combat has consequences. That's why in Star Wars, you lose a hand. You lost a leg, or your legs are cut. Combat has consequences. And in my opinion, Arcane maintains the levity or the importance, of combat in terms of resolution in its own stylized combat, which is really cool.
That's a really good point.
On the subject of themes, Sable has revealed the question. So as far
I
as
saw it a second ago.
So Sable says the question is, can a monster be saved?
Oof.
Sable Phoenix says, Silco says there's a monster inside all of us. One way or another, every character has a monster. They may deny it, run from it, embrace it. But other than Caitlin, I was wondering about that one. Everyone has some aspect of their behavior which could be considered monstrous.
That's a great point. Everyone does have that.
I still don't know if I agree that that's the central question, but I do think that is one of them.
Well, let me say this. It's an incomplete story. We've only seen one season.
Yeah.
The story
we're
has
talking
not
about the story of the first season, which is, it has an arc.
Right.
So.
Like I saw that one video that you guys saw, and it was a great video. It was comparing Lord of the Rings to Arcane, and I thought to myself, that's like just comparing Fellowship of the Ring to War and Peace. You haven't heard to the Two Towers or Return of the King yet. Mm-hmm. We've only seen this first season, and it's so thorough and so rich that it feels like a complete work of art already. Mm-hmm. And in some ways it is, but the story's not done yet. So Kate, I would love to see Kate develop her monster, whatever that is. But I think Sable does have a good point that we are watching several characters turn into monsters at varying stages. Mm-hmm. Jace, Victor, even that guy that Victor finds in the caves with that like How to Train Your Dragon thing. That goes from like, oh wow, that's so cute, he's doing such a good thing for this animal, to keeping it alive in that that like that display case or glass.
Yeah.
So, these are monstrous things.
Yeah.
And I think Vander tries to avoid this fate with his effort to keep the peace. I saw him early on as a Beast as Ally character for Vi, and I noticed he does have an animal totem. He's called the Hound of the Underground. And he does seem to have that.
He's also a mentor.
What's that?
He's also a mentor.
It true. I guess what I mean is in episode 1, the imagery seemed very beast because they were daughters. They were younger. On the bridge, the opening scene. And remember, he's beating that guy to death. He's very violent in that opening scene. And then
the opening scene is so good.
Well, it is.
Well, yeah.
We could talk about that too. What the bridge means.
Did you guys notice on rewatch?
So let's finish this off by Sable is saying that he does disagree, that it seems that this is in the context of the story. The answer is no, monsters cannot be saved. It's a Greek tragedy. Mel says we can't change what fate has in store for us, but we don't have to face it alone. Whether or not the answer is objectively true, the narrative is offering us the answer no, monsters cannot be saved. They're destined for destruction. I'm going to think a lot about that.
I think you're right that's one of the questions. I still just can't. I don't know if that unifies everything.
I'm still thinking about.
I think the class struggles feel deeper, and the questions around that and around change to me seem like those are like more core to the story.
What do you do when you're wronged?
Yeah.
Well, Sable's pointing out that all of these characters are doing something.
But these are all part of it.
Yeah.
Hello, Stray.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. What's up, Stray?
Brianna.
I think he's doing it just to annoy me at this point.
Yeah, I do think the story is incomplete, meaning it's self-contained in its own way, which is perfect for a season 1. The same way A New Hope is self-contained in its own way. However, without Empire Strikes Back, without Return of the Jedi, it'd be very hard to analyze Luke's full character arc, what it meant. We never saw him lose a hand in, A New Hope. Like, there's a lot of things that didn't. There's a lot of major hero's journey archetypal designs that did not take place in A New Hope. They took place later in Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back. So what I'm saying is, I agree with you in the sense that this is a self-contained season, in that you could pull a lot out of it, and there's a lot of satisfying elements. But man, there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of incomplete arcs. Jace, Victor, Jinx, Vi, they're not reconciled yet. What's going to happen now that the council, it's there's going to be a war between Piltover and Zahn. I mean, there's a lot on deck.
All right,
just,
Brianna,
a quick
take it
question.
from me.
Did you guys notice in your rewatch that at the very first scene that you saw some of her like the Jinx like schizophrenia images, like as they were walking by, the little like drawings and stuff?
Oh yeah, the little scribble.
Yeah,
faces.
it was like that scene was technically supposed to be from her perspective. It was like her memory of it. I thought that was interesting.
Because
I
she
didn't notice
even
that
you do see her like look up and she sees her sister. She
Well,
sees
you know, one of the most
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
one of the most impactful scenes on me emotionally was where I was like, oh man, like the first time I saw it, especially, it was late. I think it was season 7 or no, it was episode 7 or 8.
Let's say what? What show?
Where I think there's a montage of music going on and a Jinx is there and the camera's kind of spinning around her and the ghosts of her 2 young friends that she killed are like pressed up against her back.
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, like I remember those guys because they were so well developed in that first episode or 2, and then they're gone. And then you forget about them, and then they're back, and as she remembered them, like true ghosts.
They're still alive for her.
Yes, and it really hit me when I saw that.
The one that like both times made me cry a little bit is the moment when she says, you know, when she gives her that Vi gives Powder the little light that she can you know, wherever you are, put this in the sky and you'll find me. And then, you know, 7 years later, she's doing that. That gets me.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, totally. And how about that emotional range in the show too? Just being able to do that. Oh yeah, Jinx with the flare. I love that, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The flare. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
What. Yeah,
Well,
that's what Brand's
but
talking
also
about,
the ability of the animators to rise to that occasion.
Mhm.
You know, it's almost like, and I love when they get this right. The animators sense that this is an important moment, and they elevate the cinematography, the camera work. Like this, even though it's a animated show, it very much feels like it's done with a camera because there's roll focuses, there's handheld camera scenes, and I'm like, man, all of this is being animated like this. That's incredible to me because and Brianna, you would probably even know better than any of us. It feels like a director was behind the camera on this animated show far more than just storyboarding, you know?
Okay, that's a perfect segue to talk about the animation of it, because I have a few things that I just want to say that is of appreciation. One is the style of it is super unique. The only other time recently where I watched something where the animation was so unique and it really stood out was what's it called? The one with Miles Morales. What's the
Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, like that one was they were taking, you know, visual tropes from comic books and they were animating it, and that was so cool. In this case, it was like they're taking tropes from video games and then they're taking it to an animated world. So like the way that the people's their hair is designed looks very video game-y, but then so many other things are super detailed and realistic. And one of the things that you'll notice is that it's designed to look 3D except for like smoke and things like smoke effects. All of those are 2D.
They are.
So that creates this really fascinating sense of like depth and realism, but yet we're still in a fantasy world. And like that was a really cool decision, I thought.
Well, and is this considered steampunk by any stretch?
Yeah, this is probably considered steampunk.
I think it is. I read that and I went, "Oh yeah, steampunk." So
my first thought
think many people would call it that.
But it does deviate, or it has its own feel to it. Really, it's almost like Renaissance and steampunky, but also with the magic, or the hex tech, I should say. It does have its own feel. But I thought the animation was a 10 out of 10. I mean, just right off the bat. But also the way the characters are animated in their acting, the facial expressions, the subtlety. That was the next
thing I was going to say.
Okay, well, and we should talk about it too. Their ability to animate what seem to be very good fist fights and battle scenes that are coherent, functional, spatially, and are entertaining at the same time. You know, they're also entertaining.
Yeah, on the note of like the acting, like it's really top tier. Like I wrote here that like it feels like the level of realism I get watching live action, like all the little quirks in people's faces. Like there's still, it's not quite there, but it was so close. Like I feel like experientially, emotionally, I was responding to these characters the way I do, like almost like 98% there when I'm looking at like real people's faces. And I think it was all like, I'm trying to remember. I don't think they did any motion capture for this. I think this was all just like traditional.
Was it?
No motion capture?
I don't think so. But they used references. So I was watching I don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I watched behind the scenes. But the animators basically acted it themselves. So someone has a scene, and which is what most. I mean, this is what animators do for this type of thing. But it's like, okay, I'm going to animate this part, and I'm going to like act it and feel myself acting it, and then do it. So in order to animate well, and especially like drama, like facial expressions, like you have to also be a good actor. So just such a praise and appreciation for the work.
Oh,
that's amazing to me because
keyframe, that's the phrase I'm looking for. Thank you.
Keyframed, because there are, like you said, if the animators are using themselves as models to get the keyframing right, then that's incredible, because there are scenes where there's like people do double takes, or like there's scenes. There was a couple scenes with Vi and Kate where so much of the acting was just in like eye movement,
right?
And I was like, oh my god, like how are you getting this so so perfect, like to where I can read every emotion passing through here in an animated show? And I got to be honest, I thought they did motion capture a big portion of this. So
it made me really, especially today thinking about it, it made me really like honestly change my opinion a little bit on animation, because I always feel that when there's a certain level, like there's certain kind of stories when I want a certain kind of connection, that I'm always like, oh, that has to be live action. But it genuinely changed my mind a little bit. I was like, well, if you have someone that can animate as well as this studio did, I should look up their names so we can reference them by name. You could tell any story. Like, okay, let me look this up.
The BGD, welcome. Good to see you, BGD. Says the visual dissonance between 2D and 3D elements in the animation is used strategically for purposes of alienation.
Oh, interesting. Very good.
I was aware.
Fortiche Production, that's their name. They're based in Paris. Anyway, Fortiche.
All right. Thank you. No, yeah, because I was very aware of that, because it does kind of shock you when all of a sudden you have the 2D element. So, yes, I was aware of that too. Yes.
Well, what's weird is it all seemed, so much of the show is intentional. So I never found myself questioning things. Like that one show that opens up with that like song with Echo, and the animation style changed. I was like, oh, I didn't have to question it. I could just sit back and enjoy that. I didn't have to ask whether this fit or whether it made sense or anything. And and actually, funny enough, one of the YouTube videos I watched, this guy deep dives into just that scene with Echo, and he has this incredible take on how it's all about Echo represents the present moment. Vander was about like the future, and Heimerdinger's all about the past, and how there's this huge juxtaposition between characters who are focused on either the past, the present, and the future, and that Echo represents a male hero who represents the present, which is, according to him, is pretty rare. If you listen to him make his case, it's very interesting. That's
interesting, especially because there's a quote that I wrote down from Echo. Wait, let me get the exact words that I thought was really fascinating that plays into that potentially. What does he say? It's not enough to give people what they need to survive. You have to give them what they need to live, which was like kind of the statement of his character at large, of like what he represents, is that like it's not just about like he's not like some idealist trying to change the world. He's like, right now, right here, we're survivors and we're trying to live our best lives. And what does that look like?
Well, it's his version of that utopia right there in the Undercity,
right?
Which it was beautiful, and it was animated beautifully. Like, you want to hang out there. How would you not want to hang out on that tree?
And how would you not want that? I love those like the things that they used to fly around on. Not very practical, but they're cool, and that's why cool. They're fun. Like, this is what we want. This is enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm right, that Vi's Sacred Fire is violent change, which I think it might be correct, because the name of that one episode is the base level violence for change, or it's something I'm mixing it up a little.
Base level of violence necessary for change.
Necessary for change, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm right about that, what's interesting too is that echoes this sacred fire, and they're called the fire lights.
The fire lights, yep.
Even their name has the illumination symbolism baked into it. So it just, to me, it all fits together in terms of a thematic style or a thematic structure that's built out. His name, the name of this group, Vi, and Powder. It makes sense to me structurally, and it fits. The pieces fit together.
A random note on design level. I don't know if anyone has seen this pointed out, but there's something really cool that they did where they put X's for Jinx in Jinx's character design a lot. Like you see it like across her chest, but there's like in all of other places. And then for Vi, you have the letter V is like in her character design. It's even like in her hair or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you should look it up. It's really fascinating. So there's like there's so many details. So many details. The bug was on.
That's really cool, and I could see animators coming, like deciding to do that. It seems like something, like if you're an animator and you want to give certain looks or find a certain pattern you want to put into the character, that'd be a perfect one.
Any other notes on that, on the animation and stuff?
Well, I would also like to talk about the animation of the obviously the light and dark between between Piltover and Zon, done so well, in both cases. Usually, I don't know. In some cases, I feel like whichever side the author favors is the one, or the writer's favor gets all the good animation, and then the others look. The upper world is so fantastical. Piltover, I love it. I love it that it's like steampunky, but it's really its own thing with the hex pack and that giant hex gate. The airship,
like put it at a precise time in history, which in my opinion is how a good like fantasy world should feel. Like it should be. It has its own history, so why would it track our level of technology exactly? And it has magic, so of course it's going to be its own thing. But
yeah. Okay, that's good, Sable. A little bit of cyberpunk mixed in with a little bit of the steampunk. And even, you know what it reminded me of a little bit? Final Fantasy 7. Remember you had, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. What was it called? The plates. What was the name of the city in Final Fantasy 7?
I don't know that. That franchise.
You're right. It is cyber, S, doesn't it? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
In the chat, help.
Final Fantasy 7. It was the upper city and then the lower city and the plates. Oh my God. This was it's like me forgetting the word Tatooine almost. Midgard. Yeah, Midgard. That's right.
Or Midgard?
Yeah, Midgard. And there's that plot line where the power baron, he blows up the plate and collapses it on the lower city. And it's really, anyway, this gave me some vibes from Final Fantasy 7 as well, in terms of that dichotomy world of the upper world and the lower world
I can see how this must be a fun game to play. Like, I feel like I want to go exploring this world. I want to walk around in it.
I would say that's right. I didn't pick up on the cyberpunk connection, but now that Sablepunk is we just
invented a genre.
It's called Sablepunk now.
How do you feel, Sable, that you are now a punk?
So when we're discussing Sablepunk, that better be the genre of your stories now. But yeah, I was just thinking about that. But when I'm looking at Cyborg here, the RPGs, so there is a cyberpunk element to the Undercity, and then the steampunk Overcity. So you're right, it's both. It's both. Yes.
Lights and whatnot.
But man, they have some in terms of animation, the ability for the animators to imagine. There's those scenes where someone's standing and then this giant airship floats by close by in the background. I love those moments. I love, and the dragonflies that swarm in certain areas. They just did it. And there's some shots I wish I could I wish I took screenshots that we could share while we're talking about all this even. But they have these circular windows or canal openings that characters will stand in, and it looks just so picturesque as animated.
There were a lot of cool transitions that I only noticed on a second watch, like because they were so smooth and seamless. But like someone puffs a round thing of smoke, and then it goes to like a round tunnel or something. Like there were things like that happening constantly. They were so fast I didn't even think about it when I was watching it the first time. There's another thing I'd love to mention that I really appreciated. I feel like the show did a really good job with like just not over explaining things. One of the things that is just like I don't know, it's such a cool way to tell a story visually is when you're able to create some sort of a visual representation of something. So for example, there is that moment when I don't remember the name of the character, but the one that was trying to get Savika to betray Silco. He's having this conversation with her. He's trying to convince
the jaw.
Yeah, the one with the weird jaw, with like the golden jaw, or whatever. He was trying to convince her, that Silco is out of his depth and that he's incompetent and all these things. And she's sitting there thinking about it, and there's just a physical gesture that is done, like a physical action that represents, first the conversation that we don't even need to hear, which is just that she's got a cigarette in her mouth, and then he offers the lighter, and she waits a few seconds. She's thinking about it, and then she accepts the light. And then it cuts. But you already understand what that means.
Yes.
That means that she is now agreeing to work with him. And then they use that moment again later, where there was when the place was attacked, and they're looking and they're seeing the dead bodies, and they're like, what, Jinx is going to solve this for you, blah, blah. People are critiquing Silco. And meanwhile, that guy with the jaw, he looks over at Savika, and all he does is he just flips his lighter. And you immediately know what he's saying. He's saying, see what I told you? Like, here he is, And then also later when she changes her mind, or it's hard to tell if she changed her mind last minute or if she was planning it all along, but she, kills him instead of betraying Silco. And what she do? She goes and picks up his lighter.
Yeah.
I just thought that was like, that's just such good, like, cinematic language that I really want to embody more of that when I'm writing. Just like a really good reminder of like, find ways to communicate things with just visual motifs like that. And you don't have to say a word, and people put it together. That excited me.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. I zeroed in on that exact same moment where she let him light her cigar or cigarette.
A cigar, whichever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too, because I was like, okay, that's the body language of I accept your offer. And
yes.
My take though is that she planned to betray him all along. I got the sense that she was.
You're probably right.
Loyal to Silco.
But that I think she's doubting a little bit. Like, she's like, she doesn't like this guy. And she even says that to him. He was like, are you tempted? And she goes, not for, a loser. Yeah. She didn't say it's loser, but something like that. But she's like, but he won't be the last. So she was kind of like implying, yeah, I'm a little tempted to betray you. Like,
this time I didn't betray you.
Not for that guy.
So watch out. Like, but get your shit together, please. I don't.
But it also shows But it also shows what a cool customer Silco was. He let her get into that position where he had no defense, and he just let that play out, hoping that she was loyal.
It was like a power play on his end, because it was like, it would have made him look weak if he like tried to frantically stop the situation. Instead, he said the right words. That's one of his powers, really, is through words and through persuading people to be on his side and to see things the way he sees things. He just said the right words, and he just calm, and either they convinced her in the moment, or she was already convinced. But either way, same result. Yeah.
I want to address one question real quick. Someone who I think came in a little bit later said they disagree that Vi's I think Sacred Fire was violent change. I still do maintain that. I think so in hero-centric stories, there's what the heroine wants, and then there's what the native culture wants. In this case, Vander, who imposes his own claim, which is, hey, you can go do all this stuff. You can go attack Piltover. You can do all that stuff and fight the power, but you have to make sure you bring everybody back. He added that level of responsibility to her. So I think that she has been honoring that since the breach in the relationship with her sister. But I think in season 2, you are going to see the return of Vi to the revolution, to the attack on Piltover. I think when the story is told, you will see that that is what her final goal is. I think it's been suspended brilliantly in this now, but I think her goal was to fight the power of Piltover.
I wonder if maybe you should. Whoops, sorry, I just dropped something. Maybe you should clarify slightly what you mean by sacred fire. Because she's saying, I'm saying a she because it's a picture of an image. I actually don't know.
Oh.
This is a he or she that's commenting. That Vi represents violent change. And maybe there's
okay, that's a good point, Brianna. Totally. So, I mean, it's her sacred fire. It's the thing that burns bright in a heroine. And it's important to define that because there are multiple claimants to the heroine's sacred fire. It's kind of a phenomenon of their stories. And 2 of the most common claimants are the heroine herself, what she wants, which is to overthrow the system in a sense. And then what the native culture wants, which in this case is represented by Vander. And the native culture is almost always, their claim is based on continuity in almost every case. And in this case is no different. He wants the continuity of life, continuity of the system. Make sure you protect her. Don't be reckless. Keep the peace. That's his message. And Vi tries to maintain that through a lot of the story. And I think that's what Jinx is referring to later when she goes, "You've changed, Vi. You've changed too." I think she's talking about you're acting more like Vander. You used to be about fighting the power. But I think when season 2 comes out and the war starts, I think you will see that Vi is going to move front and center, and she will be I think she will live out her destiny, which is her sacred fire, which is the violent change, the violence necessary for change.
BGD, I did think about this, but not in this level of detail, but it did come into my mind. Like I said, I just watched this for the first time over the last couple of days. BGD says, I think Piltover is a portmanteau play on words referencing Piltdown, the site of a paleo-anthropological hoax of the turn of the 20th century. In parallel, the Overcity here is an idyllic lie. I did think about Piltdown Man. That did pass through my head when they talked about Piltover. You talked about built over. But
Yeah,
actually,
that was my theory.
The Piltdown Man did briefly go through my mind. So I didn't think about it in great depth because this was my first time through. But that did come up because I was wondering, how do you connect those two? But you're saying that Piltdown Man was a hoax. And so here we also have this lie of this great city. So
interesting.
That is interesting. That would be a connection that I didn't come up with. So that's very interesting, BGD. You thought about it. You connected something that had just passed through quickly my brain. Oh, because it ignores the degradation of the undercity it stands upon.
Yeah, that's where I came up with built over versus Piltover. This idea that you've got this great society up above, and yet horrific conditions below. And that's a common theme. You see that Batman and Gotham City, like I said, Final Fantasy does that very well also. But I think Arcane excels at it because I think Arcane does something that a lot of shows don't do well, which is to portray the upper city as human beings too. Like they don't just vilify those guys. You kind of understand that, like Jace. I think Jace is like Brianna, you said the characters you identified with. I would say I identify most with Jace and Vi. I'm an older brother. So I understand certain pressures when you're the older sibling to be responsible on some level and to look out for your siblings and all these other things. And I just liked her.
It's like primal, like you just feel it, whether it's expected of you or not.
Right. It's there is what I'm saying. You can't, and all older siblings understand this on some level. Do you know, I actually read an amazing scientific article that said people end up dating their same birth order.
Really?
And every time I ask, like the youngest marries the youngest of another family, an only child marries an only child, an oldest sibling marries an oldest sibling, or dates or whatever. Test this out when you're like, it holds up like 90% of the time. It's really amazing. So there's something there. It
hasn't been consistent with me all the time, but
oh, really?
No.
But
that's definitely. I do feel like I feel like a lot of my friends over the years were also oldest kids, but not all of them. I've also been friends with youngest kids. It's usually oldest or youngest.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing 100%, but I think you'll be surprised by how often it holds up.
Yeah,
It's intriguing. So,
Sable
but
Phoenix.
yeah, Vi, and I would say Jace. I identified with Jace. He always had a vision. He was trying to carry it out. He ran into a lot of trouble, and I think Jace is unique in that he was this like scientific visionary, and his character begins to adopt this political power player, which usually those two attributes are two separate characters, and Jace is kind of walking that line in this show perfectly.
Yeah.
As a man of the council and as this vision, he's Steve Jobs and he's King George III. It's kind of unique.
Oh, Heath, you need to bring up Stray's comment. Sorry,
Okay.
after this one.
Sable Phoenix for $5. Thank you, Sable. Sable for $5 says it's useful to remember that since this is animated, literally nothing that appears on screen is unintentional. Anything can have meaning.
Yep, everything.
That's totally true.
There.
Yeah,
And
everything
actually,
is
this is
there
all-
for a reason.
This is also a great point that smoking, or Sable says that smoking is a symbol of power in Zaun. So I didn't do this level analysis because, like I said, I just watched it through. But yeah, so what you could do then, Sable is saying that it's a symbol of power, but that, yeah, smoking comes up a lot. And I think it's funny that as part of like the warnings for this show that comes up on Netflix,
Tobacco use.
this show contains smoking. Okay, so there it is. There's smoking in the
Watch
show.
out.
But who is watching? Yeah, who is smoking when is probably significant. Yeah, who is smoking or when are they smoking? Even in what's one of my favorite movies that like whoever's in power is chewing gum. Like whenever they get up on somebody,
That's funny.
they start chewing gum. Wait, what is that?
One of the things, or this is a complete side note, but it's very funny to me that I want to analyze at some point is like, why is it that if you eat an apple, you take one bite out of an apple that makes you look so powerful? Like, I don't understand why that is.
Glenn Ross. I love that movie. That we ought to analyze that sometime. But whoever that sometimes people whoever like when somebody gets up on another character or there's a power change, somebody will take gum out of their mouth if they're losing power, and somebody else will stick a piece of gum in.
Really?
Whoever is chewing gum is up in the scene.
That's so weird.
So it's probably the same kind of way with smoking here. That could be. So what did you want me to bring up?
Stray's comment about Doug. Douglas once tilted his glasses. Do you see it?
What?
Oh.
Douglas once tilted his glasses in the sun.
Grace comment. Douglas once tilted his glasses in the sun and gave man fire.
I have no idea what that's in reference to. But...
There you go, mankind.
That's good.
Thanks, Trey. I'm glad you knew about that. Not everyone here.
All right. So what's next on your list, Brianna?
Well, I think this is
says I came here to talk and chew gum. I'm all out of gum. So, all right, I guess we'll just have to sit here and talk about this.
Coffee's for closers.
Thematically related to what we've been talking about is the fight scenes. I don't really have all that much to say about them. Just that they're so like I do as a director, I definitely find inspiration in how the fights are. It's like they're so. One of the things that annoys me so much is when you're like way too far away from a fight scene, and it's a thing that a lot of filmmakers would do this. What's his name does this? What's his name? The guy that did Gladiator and a million other things. I always forget his name for some reason. What's that director?
Gladiator director?
Yes.
Ridley Scott.
Thank you. Ridley Scott, he often does that where he pulls back and the idea is so you can see the full action, so you can see what all the characters are doing. I hate that so much. And this show does one of the things that I like, which is when you get close and it's messy, you don't necessarily see every single thing the person's doing, but instead you feel the adrenaline of the fight. Like you're right there in it. You're there with the characters. And I really appreciate how like it feels realistic. It's not always going to be perfect. You're never going to have a movie fight that's going to be exactly like a real fight or like a show because it's not as interesting. Like you have to kind of exaggerate the movements a little bit to make it look more interesting, but like the functionality for the most part is it feels very realistic, and specifically given the fact that so many of the characters, of course, are women, and you have women that are fighting. I really appreciate how much they are also there's this really annoying sexist trope that happens where it's like, oh, we want to make our female characters cool and badass, and they're gonna fight, but we gotta protect them and don't let them actually get hurt. It's like they're fucking warriors. Do one or the other. Either let your women be on the battlefield or take them off. I hate that like in between. It's so annoying. And this doesn't do that, of course. It's just every single character is just on so many levels, and I'll come back to this more later. Like they're just characters. They're just treated like individual people, and like their whatever identity traits they happen to have do not affect who they are as people at all. So, Vi from the very beginning, when she's, a kid and gets into that fight with those other kids, like you see her getting punched. And like, because like you were saying, Doug, and when there's a fight, when there's war, there's always consequences. So
yes.
You have to always show that. Even if you win, even if you're the victor, you're still going to get hurt. Like that's what happens. And I just feel like on so many levels, the fights just work in this show. I'll just, I guess, to my personal preferences, the ways that I like to see fights shown.
I couldn't agree more.
Stray, thank you very much for the $10. Stray says, "Love you guys." Thank you, Stray. Thank you. You're
that
a
is
huge
what
part of
Stray
this
has
too.
done with the fire I have given.
And Daniel also for $10. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you so much. Daniel for $10 says, "I'm a COVID dropout from college. I just applied for graduation. Your dedication to the grind helped me motivate me through these final steps.
Oh, wow.
Here's some celebration money."
Dude.
Oh, thank you, Daniel.
That's
thank you so
awesome.
much. I am
Congrats,
very
Daniel.
happy about that. So if you don't know what he's talking about, if you're here on Table Talk on the main channel, which is the Heath's Geekverse YouTube channel, I'm live almost every day at 9:30 to 9:40, or starting at 9:30, sometime between 9:30 and 9:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:30 9:40 Central Time, and we talk for an hour and a half about some subject in the Geekverse. So yes, and I did it to put an anchor in my day as well, to make sure that I'm doing something at 9:30 every morning. So I know people are out there looking for me. So I mean, I don't make it there every single morning, and I hate it when I'm not there. I was coming home from my brother's house this morning, so I wasn't. Oh no, 2 mornings ago, so I wasn't there. But I try to be there every morning for everybody. We've done almost 360 episodes or something.
Wow. That's pretty awesome, though. That's quite an impact you're having.
I'm live every day, but with an asterisk. Yes, some days are not there, but yes, that's right.
I just noticed another comment from Sable right before this one. Could bring that one up actually.
Oh, this one? Okay.
Yes. I also really love how characters get tired really easily in fast scenes unless they're using magic. Most people cannot fight for very long before becoming exhausted. I noticed that too, especially in the first fight between Savika and Vi.
Yeah.
Like there was a moment where they're just going at, and there's a moment where you see Vi kind of like she drops her fist for a moment, and she's kind of losing her posture, and then and she's still fighting, but she's fighting slower, and she starts like punching her in the stomach instead, because that's all she can comfortably reach at the moment, but she still uses it. She's like, this is all I can do, I'm gonna just use this. And yeah, like that was just all the details just feel so realistic.
Yeah, real fights are fast,
and
sloppy,
right?
and over quickly.
Yeah.
So I agree with Brianna. I loved all the fights in this, and I never once doubted Vi's prowess as a fighter or any of the characters. And the only reason I'm even bothering to say that is because there's so many movies that I do get irritated. They
Same.
don't do good fights. They have women throwing around guys twice their size. Like, I'm a small guy, and I've been in fights. You don't throw guys around that are twice your size. I'll tell you that.
It makes
right
no
now.
sense. It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense. And when you have a weight disadvantage and you're fighting somebody, it's tough. I mean, even moving them a little bit can be tough. They're just stronger. So this movie or this show, to echo some of what Brianna was saying, never did that. They always showed Vi taking and giving. And even when she won, she got her ass kicked, but she won that one. And guess what? That's how you win a fight. You get your ass kicked, but you win.
And you'll know the only times when she's actually like literally fighting people bigger than her, that's like, that would never happen. It's because she has magic to help her in those moments. Right. Like there's like, that would not be possible if it weren't for her, her assistants that she has.
But she's a good fighter, and I think
Mhm.
Brianna, you said it too. You feel the fights in this show,
Right.
like when she gets hit in the face, you're like, "Ooh, that hurts." When she grabs some guy around the midsection to that impact from that tackle, you feel it. Like all the sound.
And there's like 3 camera reasons for that I can think of off the top of my head. 1, it's like I was saying, you're closer. 2, it's like, sometimes you have Dutch angles and whatnot. Like you're not always, so that adds to the chaoticness of it. And then of course the quick cuts. And so all those things combined, it feels the way it feels when you're doing something that is so fast paced and adrenaline fueled. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but also, and this is a big thing that I pay attention to, and very few movies get it right, and even fewer animated shows, the functionality of the battle. Like I could follow what's happening in Arcane. Clone Wars did good at this with a lot of their lightsaber battles. That you could actually see where the strikes came from, how the guy blocked it, or the man or the woman blocked it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Arcane's just like that. They're fully functional fights. Like when someone gets punched, they go through a window. Now they're bleeding. Now it's like you said,
and then they get up with more difficulty.
Yeah, there's that one scene. I think Savika and Vi are fighting. Savika sits back on the bar for a second. And they both are like, they both take a break. I'm like, there you go. That's a fight. They're fighting each other.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Vander was the opening scene is Vander beating the hell out of I think an enforcer on that bridge, but it's very violent, these fights, and I think much to the compliment of the show.
Yes, and then another thing you'll note, I love the way that they rotate the camera and follow Vi down when Zvika picks her up and her shimmer arm. Yeah, that's a
oh
good
yeah,
yeah. Because then you're keeping it with Vi's perspective, right?
Yes,
that's another thing to make you feel with her.
Yeah, they do some great camera angles. There's even that. I think there's even that one shot where they throw and the camera like rolls with you on the ground for a second, and it's like, oh my god, you're completely disoriented.
Another thing to note on the showing women fighters is that you'll notice that when you have this long extended fight between with Vi, literally just a fist fight with someone, like I was saying, the only time she's doing it with people that are genuinely bigger than her, she has magic to help her, and then when she's doing it just with her fist, it's another woman who is actually a bit bigger than her, but it's still like it's a believable match.
Well, but all the
she wouldn't go against like a full like tall. I mean, I could imagine her wanting to, but I don't think she'd be that stupid. She certainly
all of it is earned. You see Vi practicing on that boxing machine, like, and she's getting hit. Her hands are bleeding. Like even while she's practicing, she's getting her ass kicked.
Yeah,
Savika is a physical woman. Like I wouldn't want to fight her. Like she looks like she could handle herself. She looks physically strong, and she's got some weight to her. When she throws punches, like she stays in close, and it's all believable, it's all earned, and as a result, nothing about the experience of watching the show is disrupted. I'm fully vested throughout the entire thing, and that's something Hollywood has lost. They take me out of scenes all the time, and it's hard to get invested in their story.
Yeah, they give you shit, and you're supposed to like eat it and pretend like they just gave you a cake. It's like how I feel. No. It's like, here's your nice, strong female character. So it's like,
well, I always know they're on the wrong foot when they're like, this is anchored by strong female. I'm like, okay.
Oh no.
You don't say like, this is a story about a strong man. It's like, okay, that it tells me nothing. So who's Vi? And that's what this story does. They focus on Vi. If she's going to be fighting people in the show, they show you she's a fighter. They show you she practices. When she gets into fights, it's grueling and tough, and she takes her lumps. And when she wins, it's barely, which is usually how it is in a fight. So I love it. I was at no point was I taken out from the fighting in this. In fact, I would say I was more vested, and the story elevated because the fight scenes were so awesome.
That feels like a really good segue into representation, but a quick pause. Anything else on that?
I don't.
No, the fighting was great. I mean, all the way through. 10 out of 10 there.
The cake is a lie. That's funny.
Yeah, there's plenty of things a lot we haven't talked about. Shimmer,
I was saying that was a good segue into representation.
So
that's
representation is if you want to talk about
that.
that's fine. I had starred Zero the Blade. Like I've still got this starred, talking about the Kim Barons and what Silco does for the gas. There's still all kinds of stuff. So I've still got that one starred, Zero.
Okay,
there's a lot of stuff. So go for it, Brianna.
Yeah. So I will only talk on the surface level of this stuff, like pretty briefly, because again, you could literally, other people have already talked about this in depth, like hours of content is out there. So, but I have to mention it because it's one of the great things about this show. So comparing this to Hollywood, right? Like Hollywood, of course, has been giving us a lot of shit that we're supposed to eat and pretend it's cake. And a lot of that, it comes from a genuine desire. I think my theory, I'd love to know what Cameron would say about this. My theory is that Hollywood has a long history of being genuinely very racist, very sexist, and I think the people in power feel guilty about that. And the way that the reaction has been to just like, okay, let's just really make it clear that we're super cool with all kinds of people, and just like giving and it's like, but they're going out of their way. It's like, thou dost protest too much kind of a situation. And it's like, why are you working so hard to give us like these old characters, and then just, let's just turn this into a black lesbian female character, even though before it was none of those things. It's like, why are you doing that? And it's so annoying because it's like, just that's not storytelling motivated, right?
Right.
A prime recent example that I found really stupid, just asinine, was the Rings of Power, where it was just like, this is literally a European-based fantasy world. And there are other, like, you can explore other aspects of this world that are not based in Europe. And so if you wanted to bring in a more diverse cast, that would be the way to do it within the rules of the world. But instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to arbitrarily, in a way that makes no sense within the world, just take out one random character from each of these races that are otherwise all white and make them black. Not South Indian or Korean or just black. And it's just like, what?
Well,
like,
that's representation as the supreme value.
Yes, but and that's instead of storytelling as a supreme value, right?
Correct.
Right.
Because way before all of this, the modern era of diversity and inclusion and all that hit, as a storyteller, and you can see it in comic books, it's interesting to include different characters and to shake it up and to have different types of characters from different races. Like, storytellers naturally move into that on some level, especially if you're telling a recurring story, like in a comic book run or something like that.
Yeah.
So it helps storytelling on its own. You don't need to be prompted to do it. Certainly some stories, maybe they're predominantly one way or another. I'm sure I can go to China right now and watch 90% of their movies, and they're going to be mostly Chinese people. That doesn't mean that these are wrong. Right. It doesn't mean that these are bad stories because there's not enough white guys in it. Mm-hmm. So, I've always been like, let the storyteller do it and let the public decide. But
more importantly, let storytelling be the key, because there are very, very valid critiques to be made. Obviously, like I said, a lot of Hollywood's history is genuine. I mean, there's genuinely times where it's like the term whitewashing is absolutely applicable. It's like, this was a historical character that did not look like a Western European, but it does because that's what we're going to do, because we prefer, a certain, especially in the 1950s, a lot of those movies, it's like, okay. So that's genuinely been part of history. So there's something to critique, especially like there are certain types of situations where, let's say you have a story that is set, let's say it's a science fiction story set in the future. And you have, I'm just making something up right now, but let's say you have you've got a bunch of characters on a spaceship and they're from around the world. In universe, he's gone. In universe, it would make sense for that cast of characters to be diverse. If they're like 90% white, that would be weird, right? Like, that would be weird. That would feel kind of racist. It's like, why is it only these white people that are here? Like, so like there are times when it's like you would want a story to be reversed because it makes sense in universe.
Right.
So this Arcane is a fantastic example of that being done, where it's a super diverse cast and it makes sense in universe. because it's set in a multicultural city, right?
Yeah.
It's set in a multicultural city, and there's no particular reason why this city needs to have like patriarchy. There's no particular reason for it to have that, so they just don't have it. There's no particular reason why it needs to be like deeply homophobic, so it isn't that either. So you have people that are, just openly gay. They don't even need a label for it. You have people that are men and women that are doing all sorts of different roles in society, and people that look all sorts of different ways because they're from all parts of this world. Makes sense, and it's fantastic. Well, that is what it should look like. If you're going to have a diverse cast, it should be because this is the story that you're telling, right?
Totally. I feel like it's the rule of silence. Like, the best way to portray it is to not talk about it, not bring it up, show us. And Arcane does that. Mm-hmm. You meet Vi, who's tough as nails, beats up a guy, in the early, in episode 1. The head of the captain of the enforcers is a woman. You see the council has women. Mm-hmm. None of them stand up and make I fought against, now I'm on there's no, they just were dealing with in-world problems together.
Right. And if they wanted to tell a story that was like sexist or something, then it could make sense to do that. But that wasn't this world. Right.
And that will come up at times, but it should be part of the story and it should be natural. I'm writing a story right now where some of this stuff does come up naturally. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to avoid it. And so I trust that readers will know that. I'm not too worried about it. But Arcane just shows. It doesn't tell, it just shows. And they also make the effort to be authentic with their diversity, with their representation. It's all very authentic and it comes across as authentic. And for me, the key is the hierarchy of values. Diversity is important. Representation is important. Right. But story always has to be at the top. And I think that good storytellers have to have the guts to keep that hierarchy there. That doesn't mean that representation is bad or diversity is bad, that you shouldn't do it. Obviously you should. Just keep it in its place along the spectrum. And I think a good storyteller will do that. And I think we all benefit when the storyteller keeps that in mind.
Yeah. And so just quick check. Keith, is everything still good? I saw you come in and out.
Well, yeah, I was mentioning in the chat that I was frozen, so I refreshed myself. So
okay.
Hopefully I'm here.
You haven't missed anything that you wouldn't already have.
Oh no, I was listening to the whole thing.
Okay, that's good. What was I gonna say that? Oh, because on the level of representation being important, like this is an example, like one of the reasons why I think I like Vi so much is I genuinely consider her to be like representation, to an archetype that I say I would relate to. And it's very meaningful and exciting because that particular archetype I don't encounter that often. And it's one of those things that like anyone that's experienced that, anyone, whatever it is, you have some minority trait you don't usually see that much. It's always very exciting when you do encounter it because you get so used to not seeing it and you're like, oh, yeah. Cool. It's kind of like, that's me kind of a feeling, kind of, sort of, not exactly. But, it's like everyone experiences like those characters that you relate to, but there's something else about not seeing something very frequently. And then you do see it, it's very cool. And I think one of the things that I just want to finish my thought here real quick. One of the things that why I think it works is I really don't think they were trying to at all. Like, I don't, I think they kind of stumbled upon that by mistake because if you also look at Vi's design in the game, it's very different. She's a lot more feminine. She's a lot more she's also more sexualized, but it's like in a specific kind of a way that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's a video game, so video games just are fantasies. They do what they want. But like when you're saying, okay, I have this character who her main thing is she punches things, right? Like what kind of body type should she have? And so they shifted her to like physically make more sense to that type of style of fighting. And then they also shifted what kind of personality she had and what kind of backstory she has in order to bring her to become this person. And then, I don't know why they decided that, what's her name? Caitlin was love interest, but I imagine it probably all just happened naturally. And so when you stumble upon an archetype like that, it's just a human archetype, there's a certain kind of masculine lesbian character that it's like, that's going to just happen naturally. Sometimes when you're just writing stories, you're just going to create like any other type of archetype. And I think that's why it works and why it resonates with me personally, because I don't think they were trying to make one. They were just writing a character. It's like, and that's why it worked.
I agree. In fact, and I've asked myself similar questions, like why am I upset with this character but not that character? You know, like why do I think this story does a good job and this story does a bad job? You know, like what is the difference? And one of my answers was the hero fights for all of us. So when one hero ends like, I'm fighting the patriarchy, for example, and let's just say that's just the one. Well, she fights for women. She doesn't fight for me. So it's harder for me to get that excited about it. And by the way, my character's doing that. So I still have to make sure that I'm paying attention to her and her arc correctly to make sure that doesn't come across as.
That she has to be more than just that. Is that
right?
What you're saying?
Well, or that it's appropriate given the situation that she's in. Because there are stories about women who are dealing with a male-dominated situation. It's still a good story because it's specific to that story.
Right.
But Vi, she fights for all of us. That's the sense you get the whole time. Like she's not just picking out one demographic group or one type of identity group or whatever you want to call it, and saying this is the one person or the one group I fight for. The rest of y'all are the problem. No, she's fighting for all of Zahn. She's still trying to deal with Piltover. You know, she's got her. You know, Caitlin is from Piltover. So, you know, she's like the ultimate upper class, like princess, you know, in a sense. So what I like about Vi is that she is universal. It doesn't matter her gender. It doesn't matter anything else. She's fighting for all of us. And I think that's a vital element that's missing from a lot of modern heroes or heroines.
And I think the fact that I have not seen a single, like even the kind of people that will go out of their way to complain a lot about, you know, the woke agenda. I'm using these big air quotes because I think it's a cringy phrase, but anyway, that, you know, you have these movies and shows where sometimes there are some people out there where their critiques, I'm like, I can't tell if they're really critiquing the fact that it had this character, if they there are some people where it feels like it is a little misogynistic or a little bit homophobic.
Oh, sure.
You know, there are people out there where it's like on that edge. Even people like that, I haven't seen anyone like that critiquing or being bothered by Arcane. And I think that speaks to the fact that in 99% of cases, when people react to this kind of diversity that Hollywood often gives, it's not about the diversity. It's that it doesn't feel authentic. It's that people just want good stories. And if you give them good stories and they're super diverse, they're like, oh, okay. Like no one cares.
Right.
and I get passionate about this. I get worked up about it because I find it to be so counterproductive to, if you're trying to say that you want, you know, to make the world better for, you know, whatever you want, more representation, you want to help with issues like with, you know, tension, with racial tension, you know, tension with feminism and anti-feminism, all these issues that, you know, we're still dealing with in our society. If your response to that is that you want to have stories that have characters from different perspectives that people aren't used to experiencing, which I do think actually does help. That's a large part of why our society shifted so quickly to be accepting homosexuality, was literally because of storytelling. It has to be motivated by storytelling. And when it isn't, it annoys people and it has the opposite effect. It makes them more sexist, it makes them more homophobic, it makes them more racist instead of less. And should they react that way? No, people shouldn't react that way. People should be intelligent enough to recognize it's a movie and that shouldn't affect how you see real people. But it still has that effect. And so I really think that as storytellers, especially filmmakers, like you have to have a responsibility for this kind of a thing. And if that's what you claim to actually care about, you need to act the fuck like you care about it and actually do a good job and tell a good story. Because if you don't, you're working against yourself. And that's annoying. So stop it.
Well, amen to that. Yeah, I agree. And I actually think that because they've done such a poor job, it's going to spawn a counter movement where storytelling...
It already has.
It has. I agree. It's already started. Storytelling is going to be back front and center. And we're going to get more Arcanes and stories like Arcane.
Yes. Yes. I really hope that we are... Arcane is a great example of what we need more of and what people want more of. I have more on that, but I'm going to pause a second. Do you have any notes on that, Heath?
No, like I said, I've come in very low on note, the lowest notes I've ever had, because I was just enjoying it for the first time and trying to come in this. So no, I don't. What is the next one?
Well, I somewhat related to that.
Okay.
To just give some examples, because one of the things I think is really cool when you are kind of critiquing it on this level and you're looking at like, that, which normally you don't really want to do this. You want to look at characters and not think about their identity traits. But it's really cool to see how this show doesn't fall into stereotypes, because there are a lot of stereotypes that have a very long, annoying history in Hollywood, and they don't do any of them here. So I wrote down some examples. There are many more. So there's the stereotype of the sort of masculinized, independent Black woman. They do have that kind of the mom. Mel's mom kind of fits that stereotype, but then you also have Mel, who very much is the opposite of the stereotypical Black female character. She is very feminine. And she even uses her femininity at one point, which starts to be a little bit of a different cliche of like using her attractiveness to solve problems. Like that's kind of like sometimes a sexist cliche, but she does that sometimes. But then she also uses her wit and diplomacy and intelligence, and so it's like there's that, but there's also this, and so now it's not a stereotype.
I actually think she's more compelling when she does use sexuality, because that wasn't her focus. So she's an attractive woman as animated, and she's introduced as a very cunning, very what's the word, strategic, like she knows how to play this game
that way, yeah.
Yes, and then when she does use sexuality, it's actually augmented, because you're like, oh man, how serious is she? Is she?
You don't expect her to do that, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the fact that she is doing it, you're like, is she serious? Does she like this guy, or is she playing this guy? So it actually makes her more dangerous or less predictable. And while she's doing it, you're on edge. So I thought that even though and I always try not to worry about stereotypes while also trying not to repeat them.
Yeah, I think you shouldn't overthink it, but I think it's like important to at least do a pass of it, like, because sometimes we repeat stereotypes without meaning to. So I think it's worth thinking about them, but
absolutely,
like, you don't want to overthink it, because if you overthink it, you start.
I think the key is that
you can't write anything.
Multidimensional. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Multidimensional. So when she uses sexuality, that's not like, when I think of Mel, I don't think of a woman constantly using sexuality. I think of a diplomatic, cunning, and she's very still. When she's in her scene, she like, I read this thing about lions and how lions and don't move a lot, except, when they do move, it's like to strike. So whenever I see a character, especially a power character who moves very little, I always think that they have the real power mentality secretly embedded in them. And she has that. She barely moves, and she's a painter. There's this great animation with her painting this picture. And I'm like, how does the animator getting all of that in there? It's just perfect.
Yes.
So anyway, she's multidimensional. So when she does something that brushes against a stereotype, it's immediately forgiven, totally, because she's not one-dimensional on it.
Right. Which is, there's nothing wrong with stereotypes in of themselves, except their problem is when that character is only that, or if the only example of a character of that trait in your story is that. So example, if like the only Black woman at all was Mel's mom, I forget her name, that would kind of be uncomfortable. Be like, but she's there, but then there's also Mel, and so now it's canceled out, because now you have more than one Black character, and they're not.
Well, but again, even Mel's mom, who, like, I think you're right, she is masculinized in a way. She's very she objectifies that little guy. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna sample the cuisine.
Did you see her like sitting with like her legs open and stuff like that?
Totally. But that's a power move.
Right.
I've actually read about Lyndon Johnson, the president, would be in a pool, and when people would come over to talk, he'd get out of the pool naked and be like, "What do you have for me?" And people are like, "It's a power move." So
well, she did that. She did that in this,
just
right? So when I see
it,
but even the legs spread, like in the tub and everything, all of that came across to me as power moves.
Oh yeah.
And she acts like a power move type person. And then when she's giving advice, it's power moves. So everything about her speaks on power moves.
My point is just that it's more of a cliche to do that specifically with Black women than it is with other races. For some reason, like you have more of those. Yeah. So that's something that you'll hear people critique.
No, you're right. You don't see like a woman from India in these like massive. Well, I guess this show has some, but you're right. In general,
it's less common. You'll hear a lot of Black women will complain. They'll be like, I want more examples of Black women that are just like able to be feminine and pretty. Like, why is it less common for us to? It's a weird thing. And so because we have Mel as a character, that makes that like it's not a stereotype. It works out. You have both.
And then again, when you introduce both of these characters and put them together, none of that's at the. You're not even thinking about that.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? The relationship is so strained and the mother is so dominant and the daughter is so capable that you're like, who's winning? Who's losing? I don't know. I can't tell, you know, it makes for great viewing.
Yes. I have a few more. So sorry. If someone
else does say all the characters as they're introduced in the first 3 episodes seem to fit a particular stereotype. But by the time they're reintroduced in episode 4, they immediately begin to undermine and subverting their own stereotypes.
Beautiful.
It's a genius storytelling technique to make the audience feel comfortable at first and then set them up for the whiplash later so they feel like they can't anticipate where you'll go next.
I love it.
Silco's a great example of that. Like when you first meet him, he's just like, oh, it's just yet another slimy, villain type that just uses violence to get what he wants. But no, he's way more complicated than that.
Yeah,
she meaning the mother, the only character in the show that speaks the truth, who only speaks the truth, James says. But her personality is so grating, we don't want to trust her as the audience. Yeah, and weapons cannot be unmade. I was thinking about that line earlier, and they're always used.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the mom kind of shows up in the late hour of this season. Is like, hey, got any hex tech?
Hey, daughter, I haven't spoken to you in a long time. Well, I'm definitely here for no ulterior motive. I want your weapon.
Totally. And she basically says, look, that's why I'm here. What should I apologize? Is it weird that I want this? And suddenly you're like, oh, she's defending this like completely shallow reason for being here. And then you realize, well, maybe it's not so shallow. She wants hex tech. Of course, it gets to the point where you see through all that and you're like, of course she wants hex tech. And of course she would ask her daughter's sitting on the, this gold mine. And then the daughter, it's like, well, are you going to say no? So suddenly this real simplistic plot line, as the characters assert themselves, you're like, it's not so simple. This is actually, it makes perfect sense. And the characters now have to deal with this emerging demand, being placed on
them. Some more examples.
Okay, go for it.
So you have a pretty, somewhat objectified sex worker, a man. You usually expect that kind of an archetype to be.
Oh yeah.
Character. The person who wants to solve all problems with primal aggression. A woman, where I'm talking about why, of course. That usually that archetype you would see as a male character. The other thing, sometimes it's a very annoying thing. Like if you ever see any sort of a female character who can fight at all, even a little bit, and then people always look at her and they're like, "Wow!" And she goes, "I grew up with older brothers."
Oh yeah. I read this. Yeah,
they subverted that one. In this case, it's Vi who plays the role of the older brother. To Echo, he's the one saying, "Oh, Vi, show me some moves or whatever." She's the one that's teaching these younger kids. There's a pretty girl in a shower scene with Caitlin, except it's not sexualized at all, and it's very empathetic with her. Like it's not used in a way to objectify her, but it's to show her being vulnerable. She's in a vulnerable moment. This is right before she gets kidnapped, right? And she's also like thinking back to Vi. It's a very, very good scene. But that could have been a certain kind of a sexist stereotype, but it wasn't. I think I mentioned this one already. The manic pixie dream girl with blue hair. That's a very specific cliche that is completely subverted, right? She's not a dream girl. Jinx is genuinely unwell. And so they went out of their way with not only like the physical design, like we talked about, but also just how her whole character is created to make you not want to desire her, like you're moved to want to help her. So that was cool.
I'm having to look that one up. I don't know about that. I just
the
Googled
Manic
that one.
Pixie Dream Girl.
Manic Pixie Dream Girl with blue hair.
They don't always have blue hair, but they usually have some
Pink or
sort of
blue,
hair.
yeah.
Yeah, pink's another common one for the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. You should watch some YouTube videos on it. It's a pretty funny. It's happened enough times that it's now a cliche, and people will instantly cringe when that comes up. They don't always have colored hair, but the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is definitely a.
I think even the video you're referring to talks about the pigtails, about how and when girls will wear them in like.
I don't think there's a specific video. I'm just saying in general.
Anyway, they were talking about pigtails and how Jinx even wears pigtails, but it's not sexualized or cute or anything like that. It's like it has nothing to do with that, and Jinx kind of takes the center stage on that. So you're right. A lot of these tropes are subverted completely, like regularly.
Yes.
The Manic Pixie Dream Girl exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
There's look it up. They'll find there's several movies that fit this exact trope, and they have like very similar types of protagonists. Anyway, it's just happened enough times that it's become a cliche. And then I wrote one other one down. I said, you have. So often with women fighting, another trope besides the "I have older brothers" trope is they're often distant shooters, right? So it's like clothes or whatever, and they're kind of sexualized and they're made to look pretty. They don't really get hurt. Not here, not here at all. We already talked about this, but there's a brawl between two seasoned fist fighters. It was Vi and Savika, and then Vi and Savika again. There are some of the kind of pretty distant shooter types. Like I feel like Caitlyn and Jinx both kind of fit into that. But
Savika
in all cases,
is shown with a musket or a
rifle.
rifle.
And she uses both. But in all cases, it's because these weapons make sense for each of their specific characters. There's like a wide range of things going on. So like overall, of all these different trope subversions that I'm mentioning, it's like the underlying principle is that each character is a person. And what determines their individual traits and behavior, it's not their gender, it's not their sexuality or their race. It's just like the actual histories and personalities they have as individuals. And that is how you do diversity.
Yay. I totally agree. I agree with everything you said. And I think Arcane serves as a model, and I hope I get more movies like Arcane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Grayson, exactly. She was shown as a hunter, I think, in that Winterland setting, and she was teaching Caitlyn.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Or am I thinking? Yeah, Grayson. I said Savika. I meant Grayson.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I recognize the voice of that actor. She's in she has a very distinctive voice. She's in
The Expanse.
What?
The Expanse.
Yeah, The Expanse. Yeah.
She's Christian Avasarala. Her Excellency. She's awesome in that.
Yeah, you can. That's a voice you can't miss.
Yeah, she's got like smoker voice times 20,000, and
right.
Awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's how I
actually talk about her in the Heroine's Labyrinth, because one of the variants, I talk about the Beast as ally and why there's this dynamic. One of the variants is what I call the bridal ambassador, and then the female diplomat. And the female diplomat, I feature Christian Avasarala. She's so awesome. She's not the delicate lady at all.
I've run out of water. I'm going to step out for 1 second.
Okay, go for it.
Anyway, as far as representation goes, the Arcane does it right. And I wish we were in this era of films that was doing all this great stuff. I felt like we're in an era of film and TV shows where like Ewan McGregor comes back to do Obi-Wan. This should have been a golden age. And somehow, because of this flawed reasoning, this whole era can just be thrown away. It's like a dud. Yeah, Avasarala, I talk about her. She's like the ultimate, talking about a subversion of expectation. She's not the delicate lady diplomat. She has just a spate of obscenities all the time, and she's ruthless, and I love her. She's a great character. The Expanse is another show, Heath, that far exceeded expectations when I started watching it.
Everyone talks about that one too. It's on the
It's
list.
not Star Wars with the dogfighting stuff. It's not Star Trek with the big capital ships. The Expanse is its own thing, and they have a diverse cast in that well, and they I think they do it right there as well.
Oh, I never finished watching that show. I need to get back into it.
It's awesome. They do a great job.
I really, really liked it. There was some point where I kind of was no longer intrigued, and then I stopped.
Yes, that's another one of Sable's.
It's awesome. I loved it. I couldn't believe how much I loved it, and
it's really good.
And how different it was for Spacefair.
I wonder if I froze. I wonder what's going on with me.
You're frozen for me right now.
Yeah, you're frozen.
I'll refresh me in case you're hearing.
Okay.
We'll have to thaw him out. So yeah, was there anything else on your list? Because that was a good one, and it's worth pointing out because so few writers seem to know how to do it, and it's shocking to me as a writer that this would be such a difficult thing to handle, and yet movie after movie, show after show, it's like, okay, you know.
Well, I think I've mentioned this before. I did do a podcast for a year and a half going into depth on this topic of representation. So I feel like I'm pretty good at talking about it now.
Oh, okay.
This is partly why I'm aware of a lot of these tropes and stuff because, so yeah, it's called Females in Fantasy. If you search for it on YouTube, it'll come up. If anyone's curious out there. I find it slightly cringy because I was younger then and whatever.
We always cringe
as
at
we
our
all
younger
do. We
self.
all change. But they're good. They're good episodes, not because of me, mainly because of the amazing guests that I had on.
Very cool.
But
but mainly you as well.
Huh?
But mainly you as well.
Yeah, I'm exhibiting false humility. But oh yeah, that's it.
It's on YouTube here.
Yep, it sure is. So they're all I kept them on there so they're for posterity so people can always listen to them. Yeah, I went through all sorts of things. Most of the guests are all authors. I had a very specific thing. It needed to be an author, a female author who had written science fiction or fantasy with a female protagonist. So it's very specific types of people that I brought in. I did have one other note on this on representation, and this was the one thing that I had previously had as a critique, but I have changed my mind and I no longer have this as a critique. But it is an interesting conversation that there's a slight bit of controversy about Arcane with this. Is mild. So another cliche, one that annoys me heavily, has to do with sapphic romances. Or people will say lesbian romances. I say sapphic to include bisexual women, just, romance between two women. So it's very common. You see this especially in like longer shows. And you see this in films too, but there's usually a reluctance to, shall we say, consummate the romance in a way that you don't see when there's a man and woman. Like it's like so quick. It's like, oh, and they like each other and they're together. It's like, cool, great. But then you will have two women that'll just be, it'll be episodes and episodes. It'll be seasons and seasons of just pining for each other. And it's like the chemistry is so strong. And then finally at the very last episode of the last season, they kiss briefly. And you're like, okay, why?
It's too quick or it's too slow.
Yes. To be fair, that is slightly realistic though, because to be honest, us sapphics are kind of pathetic sometimes, and we're not always good at making the first move. But that's not usually what happens. It's usually
So you're saying the long road is more likely than
it depends on the individual. But I'm making
that's true.
I'm making a joke about a stereotype that we would say within the community that there's no such thing. But I just lost my train of thought for a second. Hold on. So usually why this has happened, it's been because of higher ups just not being comfortable, committing. So the phrase queer baiting, which is a very annoying thing that happens, or basically it's like, we want all the audiences to be happy. We want to bring in the LGBT people that are going to be like, oh, cool, there's going to be a romance, between two guys or between two women, but then we're never going to actually confirm that they're actually together because we want to make sure the homophobes stay too. Right. And so we'll just drag it on until right at the end. Okay, now we'll let them kiss, and that's all we'll let them do. And that's traditionally been kind of the reason, is because of like studio executives that are like not wanting to do that because it is a little bit risky.
I think it's only risky to do it the wrong way, like what we're talking about. I think
it's not risky anymore. I don't think it is anymore. I think this culture shifted enough now where people don't care. But for a while it was. It's like, well, if you let that happen, then certain kind of people are going to be annoyed. But because of that, there's a lot of content out there with this queer baiting thing where it makes it look like there's going to be, you know, a same-sex couple, but then we don't actually like really commit to it, or we're really, really reluctant to do that. And so there was some critique that, and I felt this way too, kind of intuitively. It's one of those things that you're kind of like more sensitive to if you've experienced it a bunch of times. I kind of felt that way when the first time I watched this, because, you know, I saw, okay, well, we have Mel and Jace very quickly, you know, they're already in bed, right? And then with Vi and Caitlin, you're spending a lot more time kind of connecting with their emotional the sort of emotional connection that they have. But you know, all you get is like a very tender touch at one point. And there was a little bit of like, oh, why didn't we get more? I have changed my mind on that though, because when you look at it from a pure storytelling perspective, it makes sense. Like they've only known each other literally for 2 days. Whereas Jace and Mel have known each other for like 6 years by that point. They weren't like romantic at all, but there's a lot of history. And these two also, like that moment when they're on the bed, when a lot of people are like, hey, did something happen here? Or shouldn't we have seen something happen? It wouldn't have been appropriate because like at that moment,
she had her parents' home at that point.
Yeah, well, specifically it was, they were having a moment of connection, but it was Vi talking about her sister and being sad about this and talking about her trauma basically. And it wouldn't, if Caitlin had tried to kiss her, it would have made the moment about her instead. It would have changed the topic. You know, it would have been like, okay, now we're talking about us. Instead, she was being there for her, and that made more sense. And when I heard it explained that way, I was like, you know what? I agree. Like that's so much more authentic.
Well, even in like heterosexual stuff, like there's warm up, there's dry runs, you know, where you're like with me, like in different times, like you're with a girl and there's these intimate moments, but nothing's going to happen. It's not the right time.
Right.
You, from the guy point of view, you look a little rushed if you're like, oh, I'm going to capitalize right now on this great moment we're having. You know, sometimes you have to be patient and there is a right moment to do it. So there are these intimate moments that don't get consummated immediately. So I agree with you. I didn't know how I felt about it, to be perfectly honest. When I saw it the first time, I paid more attention to it this time. And I realized that there are appropriate, in my opinion, just my opinion, but like appropriate clues. Like she calls her cupcake because you're so sweet. And I was like,
right. Okay,
that's a little flirty. Like if I said that to a girl, maybe, or you know, that's flirty. And then there's the scene in the brothel where Vi is walking by and she sees Caitlin talking to, I think, a female prostitute. Yeah. And she seems to be enamored with her. But they don't overplay it, in my opinion. I thought it was done very well, where Vi just kind of notices. She's like,
I'll take note of that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's all that needed to be done right there. That was a perfect thing. And then also I thought about it too, like Jace and Mel, they're in a very comfortable setting. They're in his room. She's painting. Like, there's nothing interrupting them. They're not in a survival situation. So for them, I think it's an easier path to the finish line in that context. Yes. Whereas Kate and Vi are in like survival situations. They're wounded at times. You know, they're fighting for their lives. Like, that's not the most romantic setting. That's not what's on your mind first and foremost. So I agree with you. I thought upon this viewing that they paced it out rather well, given the circumstances that they were in. And I think we'll see them again in season 2.
Yes, that's how I've come to feel. That I think that they were, in this case, it was not, you know, in other situations when things like this happen, it was kind of more motivated by, arguably, by homophobia. Not here. This is the opposite. This is they're being very authentic to the characters. They're letting things progress in the way that they naturally should, and they're taking their time to make us care about them and root for them and to make the slow burn that's building feel authentic. Yeah, I
think you're right, because really romance in any character dynamic was very much in the back burner for all these characters. Even the Jace and Mel thing, it like happened in one episode, and then they're kind of like back to power politics. It wasn't something that was prolonged.
Those two aren't really in love. They're allies that have a thing going on.
Yeah, it's like, we're allies. We might as well sleep together too. So.
Right. What we're setting up for Vi and Caitlin is something I think a lot deeper. It's like a real romance, and so
for sure, yeah. In fact, I would say that's the core romantic relationship in this whole show.
Yeah,
and I think it works perfectly.
Yep.
I like both of those characters. Like I said, Vi is one of the characters I relate to. I like her, and I also like Kate. I feel like Kate gives us some of that femininity that the show doesn't have a lot of. Which isn't even a flaw. Like, it's appropriate. The women are tough in this, and tough as nails, and they fight each other and they don't care. They're women of action. Kate seems to be a little bit more of like your classic princess. And I know she's not a princess. I know this came up, but I think she delivers some of that femininity that is also very appealing in a character. So, and she does a good job with it. She's an enforcer. She's from Piltover. She's like a fish out of water down in the Undercity. She's willing to kind of like bleed down there a little bit to see what's going on. She gets on the side adventure with Vi, which becomes a main adventure with Vi. So, and then she has to go back home and like deal with her parents who are power players in Piltover. So I think Kate's actually a great character. She seemed rather general in the early part, but she really grew on me in the middle to late episodes for sure.
Yep. That was all I had to say on that.
Okay.
No, I thought it was great. I'm actually happy to hear you say that, because I actually wondered what you thought about that, because my thought was that it was done very well. So to hear you say that makes me happy that Arcane got it right again.
Yeah. The one thing that I thought was a critique was my one and only thing that bothered me, and then I've changed my mind on it.
If I had two things to complain about, and these are pretty minor.
Yeah.
One, it was the Imagine Dragons animated into the music video. It bothered me the least on the third viewing, so it might be something that kind of goes away and doesn't really bother me anymore.
It's a weird kind of jarring thing.
It is.
I was like, how about that? It's an in-universe thing.
Well, it forces you to think about Imagine Dragons in the real world, and it even got me. I was like, is that what they look like? Are they like medievalizing them? It took me out of the show because I started asking those questions.
Yeah.
And then if I had any other minor gripe, it's that there's and it's a minor gripe because I actually liked the fight with Savika and Vi. It was a good fight. My problem with it was that they had these like shimmer injectors. I felt like if Savika took shimmer, she should have destroyed Vi like easily. But it was almost like the shimmer didn't matter. It was almost just like,
I think it was like she was kind of microdosing on it, for lack of a better term. I think that
it was like these like shoulder pad injections.
It was like the big shot things that went into her shoulders.
All I'm saying is she didn't need shimmer. Like she didn't fight better because she was on shimmer. She didn't become ultra aggressive because of shimmer. It was like she went from like a 9.5 to like a 9.7 in the fighting scale because of shimmer. So I was almost like, get rid of the shimmer. You don't even need it. It's a good fight as it is. I feel like if she took shimmer, as good of a fighter as she is, she would have destroyed Vi at that point. Anyway, it's a minor thing. It's not even that big, but if I could try to drum up a couple things that I was like, I don't know about that.
Oh, so it was saying the shimmer powers the arm.
Well, that's what I thought, but that it's power. But I still would have agreed with Doug. I think that it was powering the arm, but you would have thought that would have given her a bigger advantage.
Yeah, it didn't seem to give her that much of a boost, is what I'm saying, despite the heavy dose.
Druden Fuzz says, like I mentioned, with an ancient Greek tragedy, you have to have a chorus, and that's the music for the show.
Music is great. I've downloaded the whole thing. I listen to it when I'm writing my current story because the Arcane music does something for me. This story, it's 6.5 hours, and you have this idea of the overworld and the underworld meshing. And that's a very powerful theme in book 2 that I'm writing for Empress Theodora, where there's a criminal element and it's meshing with the ruling class. And it's a very unusual, like brackish water there. And Arcane and the music captures that. And so I listen to the Arcane music when I'm writing all the time.
Should we go to some of these like starred comments?
Sure. We have some starred comment. Oh, wait, we just got a super chat. Let's go to that one first. Zero the Blade for $10. Thank you very much, Zero. Zero the Blade says, lore drop from Mel. As a Noxian, they will use anything that will get their way. It can be money, sex, or conquest. She is seeking Jace as an in-game piece to reclaim her seat on Noxus.
Really? You think that's what it is? That's her end. Well, and maybe, I guess that makes sense that she's trying to get, because I got the sense that she was kind of turning away from her heritage, but a lot of heroines do that initially and then find their way to embrace it later. Or reconcile it, I should say.
Well, she does say that she's the richest person like there in the city, but she says, but I'm still the poorest something else. Was that Noxian? Or like poorest member of her family? You're right.
Yeah, of her family or something like that.
Well, it's common for heroines to resist the pressure from the native culture, that continuity, that we want you for this. It's pretty typical that heroines say, I have my own thing. So she might be in that stage of her character arc where she's resistant to the native culture and very much trying to follow her own. And so, which suggests that you might be right, that by Act 3, so to say, she'll have reconciled what she wants with what the native culture wanted, if those are the two conflicts for her.
Another thing, another way to potentially look at this too, that I heard in some other video essay, I don't remember where, about Jace. Well, I'm going to add in some additional thoughts here too. Is that moment of the two of them having sex is like symbolic of that. Like if she symbolizes the world of politics and, there's basically Jace is being pulled between two different things. He's got this like idealist side of like wanting to use magic or the hex core, whatever he calls it, the hex tech, to use that to make the world better. The way he saw, to save lives and stuff like that. And then over here, there is the lure of power of accomplishing things right here and right now. And she represents that world. And so the moment when the two of them sleep together, it's the moment where he's like embracing that in his character arc. He's embracing kind of what she archetypically represents along his character arc. That's one way that you could see it as well, which is a cool way to approach a sex scene, in my opinion, where you have like a character web of different characters representing different ideals and representing different variations of the theme in the story. If you have two of them sleeping together, that could be like a character embracing a certain set of values.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of like two values kind of coming together in some way, or like it's almost like a physical alliance in a way. And by the way, the sex scenes between those, they weren't like passionate. It was very cautious, slow, and suggestive. It wasn't overt. It was pretty light, I would say.
Pretty artistic too. I liked how they did it.
Well, and you say artistic, like wasn't she painting in that scene like right before then?
Yeah.
Was that the same scene?
I don't remember.
Because it was in that like giant like mansion room balcony.
They were like on a balcony first, I think. I don't remember. I don't think she was.
She was painting on the balcony, I believe. Yes.
Oh, maybe.
Anyway, it was pretty light, all things considered, which makes it feel more like an alliance than real lust or passion,
Let's see about this color. James says, we got several comments on color here. James says, does anyone have any notes on the use of color? Pink, blue, white, gold, green, yellow, and red. I did not get into it that deep on this first pass.
I'm surprised you didn't even put purple. Purple? Yeah, because I mean, purple is the most obvious one, which is relevant because I did I've done a lot of thinking about the color of purple because it is a symbolic color in one of my stories that I'm working on. Because it represents a lot of things. It represents power,
royalty.
Yeah, well, that's why.
Yeah.
Power, and then mysticism, and then also fascinatingly, especially in the world of video games, purple represents corruption. So you have like, because it's like if you're gonna have like a very binary good versus evil kind of situation. We usually think about red as being evil. That's kind of a cultural thing that actually may not be what you would do.
It means like alert, alarm.
Yeah. But that's pretty common. And then you might put like blue or green or something like that as like your good guy color. Purple is kind of in between. It's kind of this in between state. And so it's especially because it also is connected with power, and mysticism, which can be magic, which can also be a form of power at a different time. It hits a really nice niche place in the human psyche in a storytelling perspective, because it's an in-between state. It can represent a character or a thing that was good and is now bad, and it can represent a thing or a character that is in sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like they're in a state of they could become one or the other. Like you don't know if they're going to be good or they're going to be bad.
Like neutral or potential.
Yeah, potential for evil. Yeah, and so of course this is a show based off of the video game, and so you do see purple being used that way. Like the shimmer is purple, and then of course it's a famous part of Jinx's character design is that she has purple eyes, and so that's another thing that she becomes over the course of this season. You see eventually she comes to be the person that has purple eyes, and I don't remember what is Powder's eye color at the beginning.
Well, I was reading that they
bring up eye color, and also eye color, specifically Powder's eye color. Sable is saying Powder, Jinx, and Vi both have eyes that continually change color throughout the show.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've seen headline. I didn't watch the YouTube videos, but I've seen that as an issue.
Yeah, and one of the things that that you'll notice, there's some key moments where it's before she has become like the glowing purple eye look. There are some moments where there'll be light reflected that makes her look temporarily like she has purple eyes. Like this, one of the moments is when Silco first finds Powder and he hugs her and he says, "We're going to show them." And then you see her look up and she has that look of anger or close in her eyes. And she looks a little bit purple at that moment. So that's foreshadowing. And there's another moment. I don't remember when it was. There's at least one other time when that happens.
Isn't her flare purple? The smoke from the flare?
Is it?
Was it purple or blue?
I think it might have been blue.
Blue. Interesting. Because
this is saying Vi's eyes are powder blue. Jinx's eyes end up the same color as Vi's hair.
No, I mean it's not quite the same color because it's like pink versus
smoke is blue.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not gotten to that level of analysis yet for the cut. Like, I can see how deep this goes. Like I said, I watched like 3 10-minute YouTube videos on this just to hear what other people were saying about it. And it just seems like, and this is a good thing, Arcane has so much depth you can bore into. Right. With my third viewing, I was able to capture a lot of the plot lines. Like a couple things I admired was how economical the screenwriting was. Like there were certain scenes that were like one line. Like the character would do one thing and then say one thing and then they would cut. And I was like, man, they are moving quickly through this, but not in a way that I can't understand. The hard part, I think, for me was to understand the totality of the plot, because I can it's like while I'm watching, I can understand it completely. And then I got to go back and wonder, do I really comprehend what's happening? Do I remember it? And I think that's where the multiple viewings really starts to take hold. You really have to, watching it multiple times, you start to see how all of it's put together. And then, once you see what's that?
I definitely want to watch it again.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this. This is going to be something I'm going to rewatch probably for years. Like one of my favorite movies or favorite shows. And I can't wait for season 2. I'm pissed that I got to wait till December 2024.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's going to be more. So I think I did see, that's like fourth quarter 2024.
Well, they gave it a green light. They gave it a green light like a year ago. And I every now and then I'll be like, Arcane release date, season 2. And they'll still undecided. We don't know. I finally Googled it the other day, and I think it said December or November of 2024. And
I don't want them to rush themselves. I want them to take all the time they need to make it as good as they need to make it.
Whatever you got to do, guys.
You do what you got to do. we'll wait. We'll watch other things in the meanwhile.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be spectacular because I feel like usually a show doesn't really gather its steam until like the second or third season, when word gets around. Arcane came out of nowhere and just won everybody over.
Yeah.
And I feel like its only flaw is that they didn't follow up immediately with season 2. Assuming it was the quality that you're talking about, Brianna, like in 2022. Could you imagine if they were able to go like year after year after year and build on this? We'd be
but it took them so many years to make the first one, so I don't know.
And if it's for the sake of quality, I'll be as patient as they need me to be.
This is something I want to talk about. So going back to the very beginning, Zero the Blade says, are we not going to talk about the Chem Barons and what Silco did with the gas? So I think this is very interesting because, I mean, one of the first things I picked up on, I suppose it's a lot of people because it's an obvious thing, but when the enforcers come down from Piltover, they're all wearing gas masks whenever they're down there. Now, like they do, the woman who's in charge takes off her gas mask to talk to
Grayson.
To talk inside the. It's not the bar. It's like
it's
magic junk
Belka,
shop.
What's that guy's name? Belko or
something like that. Yeah. So she didn't need it, but they're always down there with a gas mask on, which gives you some kind of idea about the way that they perceive the people there. Because obviously everybody doesn't run around in the Undercity with a gas mask on. So clearly you can breathe.
Well, I think maybe the implication is that they're just used to it, that the air is pretty bad.
Well, there's that scene later, like in season.
They all have that because, like, what's his name? Victor is having, a lung issue or whatever, and like that. I think that's supposed to be related from him growing up down there.
Well, isn't there that scene? I think in like episode 7 or 8, where I forgot his name, Finn, with the gold jaw and the tattoos and everything. Where Silco sprays him with something. He's like, have you forgotten what it was like?
That's what Zero's talking about, right?
Yeah.
What Silco did with the gas. I'm sure that Zero's referring to that scene right there. Because then that's when that comes up again, that he's got the gas in the large vial chamber, right? And starts spraying them and passes out gas masks.
So I think that was one of the things that had changed in that 7-year interval, that he had helped clear up the air somehow down there.
Silco?
Yeah, I think that was what he was saying.
Oh, like, do you remember what it used to be like?
Right. He's saying, I'm the one that made the difference, so don't cross me because you need to be more appreciative. Yeah.
That makes me think of Total Recall, where they would use air on Mars. You guys seen Total Recall, right? No? Well, anyway, air is a weapon.
Yeah, I've seen Total Recall.
So anyway, they would take away the air of the people. It was very in a similar type situation. They would just shut off the air and they'd start like suffocating. And then if they gave in, he would turn the air back on. So Silco seems to be suggesting something similar to that. I will say the power challenge by Finn to Silco was, for this show, somewhat weak. I never really thought Finn was going to do anything to Silco. I guess the closest I got was when Savika seemed to agree with, like you said, when she lit her cigar on his light. I was like, oh, she's going to betray him? That was as close as I got, but I never felt that he was like a worthy replacement or a genuine alternative.
Which is why she didn't actually go with it.
Yeah, she's like, this guy, nah.
Paul coming in from Facebook says this looks like some kind of cult meeting. Well,
thank you, Paul.
Yes. We have quite a few of those. Could be.
That's great. Well, are we moving on to the animal sacrificial ritual at this point, or?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sure. So you got news on that, Doug? On
the animal sacrifice?
Yeah, you want to lead that one off then?
Yes. Hold on. Let me go get the animal. I have a unicorn that I captured. We'll be sacrificing. So anyway, I was just saying,
I thought you were talking about. Actually, I didn't pick up on the cult reference. I thought you were talking about like the dragon that was being experimented on, or whatever that thing is.
Oh yeah,
I thought that's actually what you were talking about. You're talking about. Shall we? Or is it time to talk about the?
Well, yes, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, that was Victor's backstory, which I loved. He put that little boat in the water. I guess that's a little cliche-ish, but it worked because it's like a steampunkish looking boat. He follows it into that cave, and he meets I forget the guy's name. He's one of the few characters I don't remember. He's the guy that wears like he's in this the whole time. He's like the weird, like dark scientist.
Yeah, when that happened, I thought at first this was like a younger Silco or something. That I thought for a second their character designs. Maybe I don't know if I want to go as far as saying this is a critique, but maybe it almost is. I feel like their character designs are a little too similar, but it may have been on purpose. Like maybe there's something that's being said there symbolically.
His name is signed. Okay,
Singed?
yeah, no, I agree with you, Brianna. I thought that's where they were going to, because they're both like in body shape kind of similar.
Yeah, and they had a kind of similar voice, to be honest, too.
Yeah, they did. You're right.
And they both ended up having some sort of eye injury, although it was opposite eyes.
Actually, yeah, you're right. I never thought it was Silco, but now that you're pointing this out, it certainly opens itself up to that, doesn't it? But anyway, yeah, this guy, and it's actually kind of a cool little world. It's like this rather pleasant outdoor environment.
Singed. His name is Singed.
Singed, as in lightly burned. That's what I thought. Okay. Those purple glowing flowers I thought were really cool. And we see that Victor is already disabled, even as a young boy. And then there's this purple dragon. It looks just like the dragon, the Night Fury from How to Train Your Dragon, and the head shape and everything. But it had like a light white purplish body with scales. I thought it was pretty cool. And of course, he's interested in it and learns that there's a price to pay for this magical creature's survival. And I actually think that's juxtaposed rather nicely with this idyllic, almost pastoral or paradise-like setting.
Yeah.
Later, when they're in this like laboratory setting, and this beautiful magical creature is like in this glass, like barely surviving with like cataracts in its eyes and stuff. And it really looks like about as sad of an end as possible to a beautiful magical creature like this. So it too kind of highlights this like tragic existence of this world that they're all in.
So that's right. So Singed was in the beginning scene with Silco. With the rat and the cat experiment. And that's also the animal sacrifice.
Right. But he's kind of the archetype of the dark wizard, right? The evil alchemist or the evil wizard or kind of thing.
Oh, so I guess that's where Silco got Shimmer, I think. Is that the implication, that this other guy is the one that
I think Rio is in the tank. The mutation must survive because he's using her to produce Shimmer.
She produces Shimmer,
or it's through her that he's able to discover it or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
But also, with Sable Phoenix says it's so cool how baby Victor can't even keep up with his toy boat, and then after he gets the biomechanical leg, he's running fast enough to pass full-size ships in the canal.
And that was an amazing scene, by the way, for animators, because this guy was limping through multiple episodes, like to the point where that's just his character. I think it was like episode 7 or 8, even, where he runs, where he puts on that other leg with the shimmer in it, and he starts walking, and he ends up sprinting. What a scene that was.
I love the little detail. Like, this is a little animation detail where when he starts to break into a run, he trips a little bit. And it's like he's not used to walking on his own 2 legs. And so it takes a moment for him to adjust. It's just like, that's just the level of detail, It's so good.
Yeah, totally.
So people are saying that, I was looking at this, the sprinting scene comes later, but yeah. So Sable is saying that Singed is fed, or Singed is feeding Rio the purple glowing plants, because I was wondering that too. Like I said on my first run through, where the purple glowing plants shimmer infused, but Sable says he fed her with the purple glowing plants, and then she converts the purple glowing plants into purple glowing shimmer.
Hmm.
And they can't create another one of Rio? It seems like that would be a more...
I mean, they have the shimmer producing plant, so it seems to me like they have another way of producing it.
Yeah, the way it's portrayed in the movie, they're mass producing this at this point, almost like factory level.
So that's why I think I'm inclined to think that she's like
Episode 8.
the original source or something. But
yeah, it sounds like that's the case. That Rio is essential in this shimmer production, but it seems like a better idea would be to find or build or create another one of her. Or multiple.
Well, okay. This also says, this right here in the League of Legends wiki, it says in Arcane, shimmer was created by Singed from a species of glowing purple flowers.
Oh,
okay.
That he found in the caves of Zaun. His first known test subject was Rio, his Wave Rider pet. After several years of work, the drug would ultimately be perfected during his employment with Silco. Okay, so we got more lore coming in from Zero the Blade. So Zero the Blade's here with the lore. Thank you so much for the $5, Zero the Blade. Singed lore drop. He is a pilt-over scientist that is twisted with a fascination of human modification to found new ways to make things, but only once.
Oh, so his thing is like one and done.
So he kind of makes Jinx into a new creature, so to speak, at the end. Or new creation of some sort with
when he gives her the shimmer.
Yeah, the shimmer surgery. That was it's a horrifying scene.
Yeah, it is. And it's weird because I feel like Jinx is like dangerous enough, like just in this unpredictable, chaotic mode. We don't need to see Jinx on shimmer,
Right.
Interesting. Okay, and then okay, so yeah, it seems like shimmer, they're getting to this point where shimmer augments things beyond their capacity, but it's going to be short-lived, and that's the bargain.
Well, it says it was originally designed as a healing drug, but under Silco, however, it was used to create an army of superhuman soldiers as part of his plan to wage war against Piltover.
Yeah. Well, and there's actually that great sequence in, I don't remember what episode, but there's these beggars. It's when I think Kate and Vi make it down into the Undercity, like the lowest level. And there's these like hands reaching out under like blankets and cloaks. And they just look like beggars. And when Kate puts her flashlight on them, they scatter. And the very next scene is someone flipping on lights and roaches scattering, like actual bugs scattering. So
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
That's another example of great transitions.
Yeah, I mean it's like that scene and then that scene back to back, so it's like perfect contrast there. And then her friend from the old days sells her out for shimmer, and these guys turn into like these super. You could see how dangerous this would be. I thought that was very well done.
What's next on your subject list, Brianna? Do you have more stuff?
I mentioned next character identification. I feel like I will just mention this briefly because I think we've kind of already covered this, a lot of this, but obviously this is done very well with like all of the characters, but especially the main ones, the ones that you're rooting for. Everybody has complexity, including the villains. Like we've said, like they're all fully realized people. They have understandable motivations. They all have addable traits and flaws, regardless of whether or not they're a hero or a villain. And then there's like the right amount of, especially like for the main characters, like that suffering, a level of suffering that kind of like breaks your heart, but they're also so like cool and powerful in some way that it balances that out. So it creates the right level of identification. In touch with their own power is the phrase that Michael Hayes uses, which I really want to do a table talk someday on this one chapter of his book about character identification. I thought all that was done really well. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but for me, it was just like, I like that. There are so many moments where I'm just like, oh, the feels, like the moment when we first meet Vi after the 7-year period, and that she's been in this prison for this whole time. You're like, oh no. Like, I don't know, there's so many moments like that of just the empathy that I always felt with these characters. It was really strong.
Yeah, I loved all the characters. I think my weakest was Finn.
Which one is Finn? I don't remember who that even is.
Finn was the guy with the gold jaw, soldered into his mandible.
Yeah.
He had tattoos.
I couldn't think of the name for earlier.
But he's not a major character.
Yeah,
he's not a major character, but for Arcane, I just have high expectations. And in fact, if I was watching any other show, I might even really like this guy because he's designed very cool. But for Arcane, the bar is high, and in Arcane, grading on the Arcane curve, he came up low. Him and that chick with the nose, feeder, green thing, that little group seemed pretty weak to me.
And I really it's probably just because they weren't there that long. It's like we didn't.
Yeah, and I would actually trust the writers to flesh those characters out. Or, well, not Finn anymore, but they did let the other girl go away. I forgot her name, but they let her go. And I trust the writers with this show, so I'm sure they'll do a great job. But I liked the firelights. I liked Echo a lot. He came in late. I thought he was really cool because he was this little kid, and then he's this kind of hip, punkish, revolutionary, but also a little wise beyond his years. I felt like he had a good presence to him, and I loved his intro. That they gave him not a flashback, but the intro with that music written for him.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah, he's a great character.
His reintroduction as an adult. No, I thought he was done well because he when you reintroduced him, because you did see him as a kid, but he's reintroduced as an adult or young man, and he's done a lot. He's very worldly.
Yeah. Right. Well, he seems to have his own philosophy, even though he doesn't say a lot. He's reintroduced kind of late into the show, but he does seem to have his own wise ways about him. He seems a little bit like that.
He grew up too fast.
What's that?
Like he grew up too fast.
Yeah, he grew up too fast, but he also has chosen a lane, and he knows which lane he's in. And because of that, he has a certain clarity that I don't think Vi has. I think Vi is much more conflicted than someone like Echo, for example, which is not a knock on Vi, obviously. I think it complements both characters perfectly.
Zero the Blade for $5. Thank you, Zero. Zero coming in with more lore. Zero for $5 says Finn is based off of a Chem Baron that the Zon resistance allows to get the better of till he loses his power.
Oh, okay. So there's some backstory from the game. Or is this just I don't know, how a lot of these franchises now, there's a wiki, Wikipedia. There's all these wikis just for that. Is this coming from that? The extended lore, or is this from the video game? I'm just curious. Because like I said, when I see images from the video game now, it looks like such a downgrade that I don't even connect to it. I know,
because it's a different art form. It
is.
Yeah.
I heard the game is awesome.
Okay, so Zero the Blade's confirming that is the League of Legends universe.
Okay, League of Legends universe. Interesting. Yeah, I can't get enough. It's the kind of world that I could see myself getting lost in a rabbit hole just going down that Wikipedia and reading up on all these characters. Echo's lane is the lanes. Right on.
Oh, yes. Yep. Well, and I love that scene, that introduction of him, because you had just come off of, I believe I'm writing this, you had just come off of the reunion between Vi and Powder.
Yeah.
And then Vi and then you have the reunion between her and Echo.
Yeah.
And both of those were done well.
That was kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was, right.
Yeah.
Well, and there's that scene where the kid falls off the thing and lands and slowly dies on the ground. I don't know, this show went there. It goes to these places that you don't always expect an animated show to go to, and they show different faces of violence And here was kind of this mishap, but it's a boy, and he doesn't die right away, even though it's a pretty far fall. He doesn't die right away, and then he does, and then that's it. He's just laying there, And I don't know. There's a lot of those scenes that kind of hit me and made me just feel like this world is so, what's the word? I don't know, real, I guess. It's real. Like the people are going to go through real tragedy, and you're going to have to sit here and watch them do it. And you're going to love doing it because you love the characters. You're going to go through this with them.
Yeah, it goes out of its way to show the consequences for everything.
I'm looking at this right now. Zero the Blade for $2. Thank you, Zero. Says if you want more lore, watch Lore Master Necrit.
Oh, is that a YouTuber?
Yeah, YouTube channel right here. I guess it's this one right here. It looks like this one right here.
Oh,
because I see Riots talked about right here. So I bet that's it.
Wow. Okay. Good to know.
I'll put the link to that channel in the comments. Necrit.
Riot just changed League's entire lore. Everything is canon. That's cool.
Yeah, I heard that the lore in the show is actually different from the lore in the video game, and that the lore from the show is going to take precedence.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, because, like I said, I can't even go back to the game at this point. Yeah, Sable's talking about the line. One dead kid. You're sorry about this one dead kid. There's 100 more just like him. Thanks to Silco. Thanks people like you who stuck their heads in the dirt. Great line. I mean, there's I have so many notes I haven't even touched on. I wrote down a bunch of lines and that was one of the lines. So many the show is quotable. There's so many lines in the show that have quotes that you just remember.
We should go through. I have one other one that I wrote too, but you go through yours first.
I gotta scroll through to find all of them.
All the factory workers were children. Only the rail workers were grown. That's interesting. But also we haven't even touched on this. I don't have notes on this, but I mean, there's a lot more that we could do. But James had brought up that they had like the use of numbers.
Oh,
so apparently there's a lot of stuff about use of numbers as well that we could be gone into in this.
Well, Vi has that Roman numeral 6 tattooed to her cheek.
Yeah, it's numeral 6 and it's Vi and it's her name.
Yeah, well, yeah, Vi, it's her name. And
I love all the all the things about her name, like the stuff that you were mentioning earlier. It just all connects together really well.
Yeah, and I just thought it was interesting that the 6th commandment is "Thou shalt not kill." When the message from Vander to her is be careful with violence.
Yeah.
It's
her connection to violence is an important part of her arc for sure.
Yeah. So I just thought that was an astute, and think about it. That's the animator, in my opinion, realizing that Vi is a Roman numeral also, and that there could be this great connection to me, that's not something the screenwriter thought of.
Well, it could be. But
it could be.
Could have been. It
My
also
sense is that it was the animator.
Rather than animator, it could also have been character designer. When you're actually doing the character design.
That's true. The concept artist.
The concept artist and things like that. Yeah.
My gut, and this doesn't mean anything, but my gut tells me it was the art on the artistic side.
Vi is inmate 516. Roman numeral 6 is a combination of 5 and 1. 5 plus 1 is 6.
That's interesting.
Oh, look at what James Bacon wrote about that in the next comment too.
When Jinx is trying to beat Vi's score, she misses by 94 points. That's 100 minus 6. 6 is Vi.
I bet if I watch this again, looking for 6, I'll find a bunch of them. 100 is the number of completion. Interesting.
This was released in 2012. Oh, so this.
No. Vi is the character, I think, in the world. Like.
Vi. Okay, Vi was released. Vi was released in 2012. Oh, gotcha. I was about to say, wow. All right, so you want to look at some quotes that you've got?
I mean, I've got a bunch. Some of them are just small quotes. Some are bigger. But the one quote that's repeated often in the show was Vi telling Powder, "You're stronger than you think." I wrote it down as a significant quote in episode, I believe it's 1. That's wow, God, I got so many notes. Yeah, that's just episode 1. And then she follows up with one day the city's going to respect us. So,
Right,
you know,
yep.
they're coming up in the world. That's their goal. But what's weird is I wrote that down as I thought it was interesting in just from the context of episode 1. But as the show progresses, that line becomes a pretty problematic line for Jinx because it seems to be in conflict with how she was actually treated by Vi. In her perspective, Vi abandoned her. So this idea, oh, you're stronger than you think, seems to be this, like, I want to say paternal / maternal comment, like, hey, you know, you'll get there. You know, you're better than you think. That's one of those like pep up
You can
lines.
do it too, but
Yeah,
I'm not
totally.
gonna help.
Yeah, it's a show of faith in somebody. It's I believe in your potential. It's the kind of thing that would be spoken to you by somebody who's older that you look up to, if you cared. And this becomes a kind of almost poisonous memory or a poisonous quote for her later.
Sable for $10. Thank you, Sable. Sable says also Vi is held on level 40 of the prison. 40 is very significant in a lot of religions. 40 days and 40 nights of the Great Flood.
Yeah.
40 days of isolation for Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha. 40 days was her length of time they quarantined ships in the harbor during the Black Death. So, Quaternta is 40 in Italian.
Interesting. So that suggests that wait, what was it? She's held on level 40 in the prison. Okay, that's what I thought. That suggests that she's going through massive metamorphosis then, because the 40 days in the desert, for example, is you know, you're deconstructing yourself and reconstructing yourself in that 40 days. So that makes sense. That's actually the perfect spot to put that number 40 is on that prison for Vi. And I guess the symbolism there would be she's going from young Vi to old Vi, you know, the Vi that we're going to go through most of the story with. Just like Powder
James
was young
says
Powder.
the most poignant quote in the whole show for me was when Vander told Vi to take care of Powder. There's some pretty severe subtext there. Take care of means to care for or to destroy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, take care of her.
You better take care of her.
Which inadvertently is what she does. She destroys Powder, and then Jinx is what hemorrhages instead.
Or that maybe need to take Jinx out.
But well, I think that it works on that double level, but I don't think it was intended to mean take care of Powder. Like, I don't think, not from Vander anyway.
Well, no, but just I think James is just saying that, like,
in retrospect,
right.
Looking back on that what are you going to have to do to Powder becoming Jinx?
Totally. Well, but that's also what a parent would say to the older sibling. You know, hey, you know, watch out for your sister. You know, keep an eye on your sister or your brother or whatever. The other line that I wrote from Vander was, and I like this, when he's telling her about responsibility, which I think is a crucial discussion between Vander and Vi, because Vi adopts this worldview from Vander. He's like, the message on leadership, whatever happens, it's on you. I just thought that was a very succinct way to remind her what it means to be the leader.
More quotes?
Man, I've got a whole bunch.
Sure.
Do you have some ready?
Well, I just have one other one that I wrote down, which was the in the pursuit of great, we failed to do good.
Oh, yeah.
That one was,
Great line.
That just like was the
like that one,
summary
too.
of both of those two characters and their arcs and their roles in the story, and the tragedy of them. And yeah,
I think that's on the lighter side of Sable's earlier theme of the idea of monsters. You know, by aiming high and ending up low, you're becoming that monster. I think that plays into that concept or that theme right there.
Yeah, that was a great line.
In the comment, they're appreciating the actor that did Powder for that scene. Like,
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Sable says, can we mention that Powder's actress was 11 years old when she was screaming and crying after her sister leaving her behind? I've seen interviews where cast and crew talk about how she had everyone crying with that performance.
Really?
A lifetime, that James says.
Yeah, and one of the things that I watched, the director, he was talking about how he was really nervous having this like child actor. He was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna direct this. And if he didn't need to, she just did it. And it was just like,
Wow.
so
See, I have a theory that great scripts elevate actors, and that sounds like that happened there. That the scenes and the scenarios were so spot on that the actor, in this case the actress, got there immediately. Like they understood it at that level.
Also just a young talent who did a fantastic job.
Well, but don't you think, and you guys would probably even know better than me, like I said, for me, it's a theory. A great script, doesn't it bring it out of you a little bit sometimes? Like you're able to find that human line there and elevate you.
When it's genuine, yeah, of course. Like that's the real, like that's when it becomes hard for actors that are, especially if they're less experienced, where it's like, if there's not much genuine story there, you have to make it up in your own head. Yeah.
This was the line I was thinking about, going back to the very early conversation when we're talking about the theming about who are you going to give up, or what would you give up, or who for what you want, because this is when Vander is talking to Vi, and this was kind of that conversation was what I was talking about, that they're going to follow you, you have to be sure. They used their first take too. They tried to do a second take and just couldn't reach the same heights. Maya Sinclair Genis said she imagined losing her own brother, who was her best friend.
Yeah, there's this other line here. Jace is actually, this is early on. This is episode 2. Jace is considering suicide. I think he's going to jump off that cliff edge or that canal opening. And Victor interrupts him. Hey, what are you doing? And
am I interrupting something? I think is what he says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this great line where he's like, when your goal is to change the world, don't ask for permission. I just thought that was a pretty cool line too. The show is loaded with great lines. Yes. When you're going to change the world, don't ask for permission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this goes back to my theory about Vi as the sacred fire.
And that line comes back. Yes, I recognize that too, James. That line comes back. Am I interrupting you? They reverse that line later.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Episode 8 or something, right? When Victor starts to go off a little bit to the deep end, for reasons that we sympathize with, but definitely gets more extreme as the story goes. So early on, there's definitely more talk about revolution. And then they're talking about the lanes are going to fight. I wrote that down because that's foreshadowing for this coming revolution. And it's interesting. Even now, I'm rethinking this. The first couple episodes were strong about revolution, and then it gets kind of muted, and we really get into the character arcs of a lot of these characters. That's why I think season 2 is going to focus on this battle between Piltover and Zahn, and I think it's going to be the revolution. I think it's going to be a very violent season, probably excellent too.
I like this, what Sable is saying. That I thought of this one too. I loved this line too. Are you sure this is safe? Of course not. That's between
it's not Victor. The response you expect. Yeah.
Well, but he was with it. Like to me, it was. Jay shouldn't be expecting it to be safe. Earlier on, he wouldn't have even thought about that. He's just conducting his experiments and doing stuff. And so it's odd that he says, "Is this safe?" And so Victor says, "Of course not." Like, what are we up here doing things that are safe? Because that's Heimldinger's thing.
Right. Right.
So he says, "Of course not," because it's a weird thing for Jace to ask because he's changing.
Right.
Scott says, read great scripts. Yes, good writing means the underlying motivation. And good to see you, Scott. Welcome. It means the underlying motivation is very understandable, relatable. So the actor naturally knows the emotion and internal motivation, and the circumstances of the scene provoke the emotion from the actor.
Yes.
See, I agree. I feel like if the underlying structure is there in the script, and by underlying structure, I mean character, that an actor, the chance that clicks is just increased. And if that actor clicks with that and the structure is there, I mean, the reality of that character is there, you can get a performance like that rather quicker than normal anyway.
Right. It takes like an extreme amount of experience. I think like your A-list actors that you can give them very little and they're able to still get there. And that's because they know how to they're doing that work themselves. Like they're creating that. They're saying, okay, so now, I mean, to a certain extent, any actor will do that, being like, all right, let me think about the specifics of what the motivation is for my character right now in this moment. But then the more that you have to work with, like the easier it is to get there. And yeah,
there's a great scene in Birdman where Ed Norton's character comes on and he just like completely interprets the script like instantly, almost like Mozart level. And then they do this, and it's like a much more charged scene, and it works perfectly. That gave me some appreciation for what an actor can do with a script. I thought that was a great scene.
Silco's best line: "Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?"
Oh yeah. That was I don't know what you think that was his best line. Undoing as a daughter.
Is there anything? Yeah, I remember that. Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
I thought it was a great line. I never thought of it necessarily as his best, but I guess I haven't really weighed out all of his other lines.
That's what we'll do on the fourth watch, is figure out what Silco's best line is.
Yeah, it's going to be so much richer watching it again. I mean, of course, you guys have been through it several times, but after this discussion, I didn't have time to go through and watch all of the YouTube commentary and things like that. So it's only, this is definitely one of those things that's going to become richer as we watch over and over again.
Oh yeah, this will be endlessly mined.
On that note, one of the things that I put on here that I kind of feel like I don't have the energy anymore to go into this. It might be for later, which is just talking about the character arcs. I mean, we can maybe look at it briefly, but because that's like a whole thing, and I think when we're talking specifically about like madness arcs.
Yeah.
Relevant to that, but maybe that should be saved for when we like talk again about that topic, and we can come back to her.
I'd almost like.
I haven't really thought about it. I just know that I watched one video about it a while ago, and I had a bunch of notes on that was helpful when I was researching that topic then. But I haven't really. I need to watch it again myself, specifically just watching her arc and to study it. So I haven't done that.
So wait, real quick, Sable, what episode does he say that in, and when does he say it? Remind me, please, because I think I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, chats. Like I know that I've been on your shoes where you just can't type fast enough, and then the conversation moves past it. So he's saying nothing. Shoot, now the chat is moving. What Silco is saying in that line is that how he realizes what created Vander's decisions. He has given up on his dream of independent Zon for Jinx's sake. Oh, similar to the way that Vander gave up.
That's why he's sharing a drink with him. That makes sense.
Episode 9. Okay, good. That's what I was hoping for. Is like 8 or 9. Because Vander changed his approach to more of a peaceful truce, like a fragile truce between the upper and lower cities. And Silco is now facing a similar decision. Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sable. Yeah. I see what you're saying. That's a good point.
The madness arc we could try to go into here, but if you're not completely prepared, we're still going to talk more about corruption arcs and stuff, so we can use this as an example, like return to what happened to Powder/Jinx when we're specifically going deeper into that story, to that arc. We can do it.
Yeah, because hers, I think, fits into the same broad category as Harvey Dent Two-Face. I feel like I don't know. I'd have to look at it in depth, but my gut says that they probably are hitting similar notes, because it's I'll just
a traumatic experience.
Like the differentiation I make when there's like madness or disillusionment that's happening, it seems to me to be a change in its beliefs. I mean, there's always a change in beliefs in
but I would say a rapid change.
But it's usually driven by a traumatic experience, and that it's not just a change about how to behave in the world, because that's what corruption would be. It'd be you changing your beliefs about what is the right moral action to take. Whereas when madness is involved, you may have that happening, but you're also specifically having a change in how you're seeing the world and your position in it. And that what the change is incorrect. So you're perceiving the world and your position in it in a way that is incorrect, and that you are now behaving based on that new change.
Well, it's almost like, I would actually add the dimension of time to that, because a corruption arc involves time, a slow eroding of one's beliefs into another, whereas the madness arc is like now, like all that change happens all in this one moment, and now you're shifting over. And the madness really is probably a symptom of you being unable to catch up to all that change that you're going through. Like Powder to Jinx was an immediate change. Harvey Dent, that happened like overnight. Whereas Anakin, it took years.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's one of my notes that I wrote down, that like if you have a character like that you want them to corrupt, and you in universe, you don't have that much time, like temporally, that that you want to introduce some level of disillusionment.
What's interesting is
you want to introduce like a traumatic experience, because if someone has disillusionment, that can happen, like you're saying, that can happen very fast. If it's just corruption of values, that tends to be more gradual. Your brain has to catch up with, you have to be justifying every step. But if it's just like you've suddenly shifted how you see the world.
Even societies, a lot of revolutions, for example, end up going off the rails. And it's making me think that in the terms of a madness arc for a character, the reason a revolution will go off the rails is because there's so much change that there's no lines anymore. So any change can suddenly start taking place, and you can really move in any direction rapidly to the point where it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. For a human, if that's true, then that means you're in a state of change that's so thorough that your identity doesn't have any boundaries. You can literally go anywhere. So that would be a grounds for madness at that point, because there's nothing grounding you anymore. The change was too rapid. It was too much all at once. All the boundaries are blown past. So there's nothing to know where to stop at that point. And this is an out loud theory. I'm my thought about this.
I think it's interesting, because we've talked about the difference between like a madness or disillusionment arc. I'm calling that the same thing, because I think this is the evolving theory. I think that they are structurally the same, but they may be different things. Like a character might be disillusioned, but not crazy. But I think that if they're making that shift, it's going to have similar beats. But it's interesting to note that, like, that's not the same thing as, we're talking about real life mental health issues. But Jinx is a character in this story that's both. Like, she has a genuine psychosis, but then she also is following this sort of madness / disillusionment arc.
Yeah,
right,
I totally agree.
Yeah, our Jinx, simple question, episode 6. When hugging Vi is heartbreaking, are you real? Because we the audience know what she's really asking. She can't even trust her own senses. So that's that line of that arc.
Well, from a psychological standpoint, they say the most likely reaction to something profound is disbelief. In fact, the reason I heard that is George Lucas did research for how would Luke Skywalker respond when Darth Vader says, "I am your father."
Yeah.
Disbelief. He was like, "No, that's impossible. That's not true." So that's why he had Luke respond that way. That's I don't believe you. I can't believe. So yeah, when a character does that in a story now, I'm a little more sensitive to it because of that one line from George Lucas. But perfectly done. Are you real? And it kind of hits you too, because you've invested 9 episodes with these characters, and you know them and you know what they're dealing with. So when she asked that, it is kind of like, yeah, she's down.
No, that was early. That was early. That was their first meeting.
Yeah, that was.
No, that wasn't their first meeting. That was their first meeting where they had time to talk.
No, that was the first meeting when like she very first sees her
after getting out of prison
after 7 years.
Yeah, and there's the reconciliation. It seems like there's going to be a reconciliation.
That's the
because they're
first thing she
finally
said.
Is
together.
it at the flare?
Yeah, the
Right,
flare.
right after the flare. Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking that she said it in a different scene. Okay, so she says it at the flare. Even better then, because that's the first time she sees her. Okay.
Yep. That's the first time she sees her after that.
Beautiful.
The Scott comes back to the monster theme. Also, I'm the monster you created. You knew she was going there. This is not just Jinx. It's all the characters. It's the city. It's the two cities, the whole situation. I don't know if you were here earlier, Scott, but we talked about a theme of can monsters be redeemed or can you escape that? So that's an interesting point there.
You save a
That she
monster.
does say, I'm the monster you created. So we do have the monster theme going. That's interesting. Yeah, there's a monster.
Yeah,
inside
and
all of us.
Sable actually, one of his theories is that the redemption, our monster is redeemable. He's posing that as a potential unifying theme to all of Arcane. So anyway, it's interesting you said that because that would play into that theory for sure.
Yeah, that's what Sable was saying is the core question
Right.
revolving around the creation and redeemability of monsters. I'm going to think about that a lot more when I watch
In terms of dialogue, I want to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm just reading my notes and we covered this. Vander's last words are "take care of Powder." And in my notes, I go immediately to another quote, which is after the drama that creates where Powder kills her friends with the bombs. And she goes, and it's so sad. I'm even thinking about it because I wrote it down. So she creates an explosion that kills her friends. And her response is, it worked. My monkey bombs finally worked.
Right. Yes.
That's the way she responds to this terrible tragedy. And Vi
She doesn't know yet that they're dead.
She doesn't know. Yeah.
Right.
She
You
doesn't
know, when I
know.
watched it the second time, there's a part of me that's like, no, I don't want it to happen. No.
Yes, it's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And Vi's response is, you did this? And then she goes, I was saving you.
Right.
So what a great, and that's not a lot of dialogue. That's a very small amount of dialogue. And then at least as far as my notes go, the last major line of dialogue that I thought was noteworthy was Vander saying, take care of Powder. So you have Vander's
She's not doing
dying
a good
word.
job right now.
What's that?
She's not doing a good job.
But exactly. But Vi always does a good job. She's extremely competent and always makes good. So the one time she totally fails is right after given this directive from Vander to take care of Powder. She has her moral failing and it just changes everything. Clearly, I just think that's great writing, both from a storytelling standpoint and then from a screenwriting standpoint.
So it's heavy.
Yeah,
So
it is.
sad. It's a sad story.
God, I don't think I've ever taken this many notes in my life. I have so many.
I just want to make a note about tragedies in general too, because I've been having this long-standing argument with a coworker about tragedies. No, you always want to make sure that the main character survives and all this. I'm like, yeah, for certain kinds of stories, but for other kinds of stories, tragedies.
Thelma and Louise.
We've eventually come to a standstill and decided not to talk about it anymore. It's kind of a joking, kind of a joking, kind of a not real argument, but we have it all the time just for fun.
It was like friendly, but not quite perfectly
we have this
friendly.
long-standing joke that I'm writing a screenplay and he's going to be the main character in it. He keeps telling me what's going to be in the screenplay. I'm like, sounds like you want to write this. And he's like, yeah. And then I'm going to survive and it's not going to be a tragedy. I'm like, oh, you know what I'm actually working on right now? A horror, and I'm killing a character right now. And he's like,
you should almost not talk to him until the screenplay is done.
But there's something about, because I'm definitely drawn to tragic stories, but there's something about them that's just so compelling. And I don't know what you guys, we'll come back to this, I'm sure, in another table talk, but it seems to me that it's because, how do I put this in a single sentence? The purpose of like a positive arc is it's showing you how to behave, right? And then a tragedy is showing you how not to behave. It's showing you what not to do, how not to interact in the world. And we pay more attention to negative things. Like we remember, our negative memories more than our good memories often. You sit at night thinking about like whatever, some cringy thing you did 5 years ago, but you
or
won't
if you post something, you'll read you'll read the 50 positive comments, but the one person who was an a-hole, you're
exactly.
like, oh.
Exactly. And so we're just primed that way psychologically to pay more attention to negative things, and that makes sense, I guess, evolutionarily. But I think there's a reason why sometimes tragedies can be more effective depending on what kind of message it is that you're dealing with. If it's something that you really want to get people's attention, something really serious, sometimes a tragedy is better because you like some part of you just pays more attention to that, I think. I don't know, especially like with moral issues. Like if you're trying to talk about moral issues, it almost seems like it's usually better to do it tragically.
Well, I do think it depends.
Yeah.
Tragedies can be the thing that you don't want to rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a positive story with a positive ending might be easily rewatchable. Like there's movies that are tragic and phenomenal, but I don't really want to rewatch. Like, I love this movie, but it's hard to rewatch. Black Swan with Natalie Portman and Mila.
Don't spoil it for me. I still haven't watched it. That's high on my list.
It's phenomenal. I love it. She's the masked minotaur of that story. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable how they tell the story. But it's not something I want to watch over and over and over again because it is a downer. So,
well, also that director usually makes movies that are hard to watch.
Aronofsky. Yeah,
that was intense, and I don't want to see that again.
Yeah, well, he has a theme about perfection to the point of breaking, the human mind. Yeah. But anyway, tragedy does have its place. It's hard. I don't know if I would say it's preferable in all cases, but
no, not at all. I'm just saying it has value is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Zero the Blade for $5 gives Hextech info. The crystals are soul gems from the Brackern. That's why there's a scream before it explodes.
The crystals are soul.
I'm gonna have to. So they scream before they explode.
They scream before they blow up.
Oh,
I missed that.
That's weird. Interesting.
Wow.
But yeah, I think this shows an example of that because it is tragic. At least the first season is like, it's like most of these characters are going through tragic arcs on some level or another. They make terrible mistakes and there are terrible consequences. And yet it's yet it is, and yet this is very rewatchable. It's so compelling.
Actually, that's a great point. That totally counters what I was saying and is true. I'm going to watch this over and over and over again. And you're right. These are tragic characters in a lot of ways. It's almost like this has that blend of characters who have those moments of beauty despite the tragedy of their lives.
Yeah.
And I do like stories that give us that, where you got tragedy, and it crescendos with these beautiful moments before it returns back to the tragedy of their lives. And it's all centered around that one moment in some cases, in some movies where that happens. And this has, because it's a long story, it has a lot of that.
So actually, in the show, they don't scream before they explode. They make a nifty whooping noise after, though. I love the sound design in Arcane. It's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
So in the game, they scream, apparently.
Yeah, well, and talk about sound editing. Like the lighter, the little mechanical dragonflies. I found myself this viewing on the third time through really noticing the sound editing of the show and how perfect it is. Like they almost got it exactly right. Like putting like wooden blocks down, like everything. When he knocks down the house of cards, when Silco's, remember that scary scene where Silco's in the room with the daughter with the house of cards?
Yeah.
And who is it? Marcus comes home. That's not what you want to see if you're Marcus.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sound effects
can really get to you.
Yeah, so that was another example of a tragic character, Marcus. I just...
Oh, yeah.
And like, this is one of those things where I'm just going to mention that one could do this. Obviously, we don't have time for this. But you could, and I'm sure other people have already done it anyway, like go through every single major character and you can point out like their wound, what their want or desire is, what their needs are, what the lessons are that they need to learn, whether or not they do learn that. And, you know, some of them are tragic, some of them are positive, most of them are tragic, and like they all have those elements. They all have, some guiding principle that they're taking and how they're navigating the world. They all have some sort of moral challenge that is posed to them.
Well, they're all kind of trapped in a weird way. Like you brought up Marcus. He seems like a guy that's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be an enforcer, and he's also trying.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think they all have choices, and I think
they are, but they seem to trap themselves in their choices. Is what I'm saying. They
trap themselves. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, meaning like they make the bad choice, right? And it's not that consequential. But then 2 episodes later, it's like unsolvably like consequential, like the decision, he puts himself in such a bind that now, in fact, that scene that we were just talking about with the House of Cards was a great role reversal. Marcus seemed to be the guy pushing people around down in the Undercity. And now Silco's like, shut up and do what I say. Last chance. And you're like, ooh, Marcus is now under Silco's thumb, and there's no question about it. And Marcus knows it now. And I didn't get that sense before, That's what I mean by getting trapped in your decision.
Gotcha.
James Bacon, undone by the daughter.
Yeah.
Interesting. In fact, there's no father-son relationship in this whole show, is there?
Because it's not about that. It's about, so they're keeping it thematically consistent.
Well, I mean, you could have it though, like it wouldn't disrupt anything or ruin it, but
no,
there are none.
But I think it's probably strengthened in this case to keep it like it's. I guess there is a mother-daughter situation, but it is mostly father-daughter.
Oh no, there's mother-daughter. With Mel.
Mm-hmm.
What's the?
Well, there is kind of. I mean, I don't know if you could really call like Singed and Victor father-son, but I guess that's more just.
That might be as close as it gets, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no direct father-son relationship in this, at least in season 1. Phoenix, almost like they're. What is Mel's mother's name?
I know. I've been just referring to her as Mel's mother. I don't remember.
In all my notes, I just wrote the mother.
Yeah, it's Mrs. whatever her last name is, right?
Medarda.
Yeah. No, well, Sable's got a name here.
Okay, Sable knows. Ambessa.
Ambessa
Medarda.
Medarda. Medarda is pretty unusual.
It's a good name. It has the right feel. It's very like, it feels like a fancy, powerful house name.
Medarda. Yeah.
They also they're fancy and powerful, but they're also like strong and ruthless. So the repetition of the D consonant adds in that sense of like ruthlessness.
Yeah.
That word.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also that scene where Jace traps himself. There's in the early scene, I think it's like episode 3-ish, where Jace has the potential for new hex tech, and it's Heimerdinger who's like, we need to test it more. Remember, he's like, we should test this more before we just release it out there.
Yeah, the safety thing. Yeah,
yeah, and Jace goes into this like Steve Jobs type reveal, and he's like, and we have hex tech that will be really awesome for all of you in the future. And he really like hedges it by not really revealing what it is. I thought that was interesting because that was that was more Jace in his more idealistic early years, early in the season where he's willing to wait and not go for the glory or anything like that. Oh, I was going to ask you guys too. And what's amazing is in 2021, this wasn't much of an issue. 2023, it is AI. Hextech seems to have a little bit of this AI quality to it when it's that like glowing Rubik's Cube orb.
It learns.
Oh, right.
Did you guys think of that it had like an AI type feel to it?
I think it was supposed to imply there was some level of intelligence going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that till you just mentioned it, but it did have, they were saying that it's something that it's more than the sum of its parts. I'd forgotten about that, man. That's not exactly the phrase they used.
Yeah, but they were implying that it learns.
And it learns. There was a learning. Yes, that's right. That's right.
And that biological matter helped it learn, like blood, like when he dropped blood on it or something like that. But it was just interesting because when I watched it last year for the first time, I didn't think of it too much as AI. I just thought of it as dangerous tech going out of control. But in 2023, where AI is front and center, suddenly that just took on a different feel to me. I was like, oh, this is AI they're dealing with. They don't know if they can control it. It just felt a little bit different this time through.
I will admit my energy level is starting to go down, but
I am too. I'm actually feeling like I might be getting a little bit sick. I've been a little bit low. I didn't have all the notes this time because it was my first watch through because I was just overwhelmed. So that was that. But then also, I actually feel like I'm getting a little bit sick. So I'm not.
No.
Oh no, dude.
So I probably should go to sleep and make sure that I don't accidentally like crash myself or something. But Zero the Blade for $5 says Rune Lord Vic was using precision, domination, sorcery, and resolve. Sky was carrying inspiration. They are the world rune symbols.
Okay. Yeah, all those little symbols on each little panel.
I wanted to see before you wrap up, Doug, if there's anything else from your notes that you are burning to talk about, because I know you had more.
Honestly, I have so many notes. It's almost hard to organize them. I didn't anticipate that, but I'm done. So whatever you wanted to say, I'm all ears.
I actually went through all of my notes. The only other thing that I mentioned here, and I don't really feel like going into it, it was just the 3 acts and how it was. I guess I mentioned something briefly about that I thought was interesting. It's how you have each of these obviously set with their own character, their own story arc, but they also lead into the next. Specifically thinking about the characters and their wounds. So like with Jinx, well, let's say Powder and Vi, I feel like you set up their wounds in the opening scene that affect the first act, which is the death of the parents, right? And then it's the end of of course, the horrible tragedy that happens at the end of that, which is obvious of how that affects both of them. That sets up, like, that's now what they're dealing with in Act 2 is, her having left. Oh my God, I'm just having a hard time talking. Her having left her and all that. And then, but I'm trying to think if there's an equivalent one. I'm sure there is, but I might have missed it. Like what the equivalent end of Act 2 thing is that then is like another wound that they're dealing with in Act 3. So I wonder if either of you guys could think about what that would be. Well, so at the end of episode 6, I'm forgetting actually what happens then, but I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, so it seems like even if we don't return to Arcane, until the next season comes out, specifically return to Arcane, there's more to talk about Arcane with perhaps story structure then, moving us through the acts then, when we use this as an example for there, and then also when we talk about corruption arcs. Corruption and madness arcs.
Yes.
I think this was good because we went over a general discussion of Arcane.
Right.
However, I do think we should come back to it at some point. It doesn't have to be next week or anything like that, but we should come back to it. And I think we should pick specific topics to dive into, because I think what's fun about Arcane is boring down into a more narrow topic to see what's down there, all the gold that we can pull up. I think we did a good job of discussing it in general terms and like the basics in terms of animation and arcs and diversity and representation. The themes that are covered in it, even sound and soundtrack and music, like Symbolism. Definitely good to cover all of that. But I think it'll be fun to go into some specifics with Arcane and to bore down into that. The one thing I wanted to add real quick, Heath, is there is a moment where the character says, "Do you know what your problem is?"
Yeah, I noticed that.
With Lou Enders, he said that there's that.
Yeah. Lou is big on that. There's always that moment that you know what your problem is moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 5, Vi is talking to Caitlin. And she goes, "You know what your problem is?" And I was like, "Oh, there it is, right there."
Which one says that to who?
Vi says it. I think what she says after that, I'm not gonna remember it word for word, but I do remember because I watched it today. It's something about like, you think that you can people are just going to give you what you want, but if you want people to give you something, you need to, what was it? You need to give them what they want. You need to make them believe, something like that. And she's like, what do I want? And that was, of course, the moment that all the sapphics loved the most.
Oh, okay.
She walks around, she kind of gives her a second look. She's like, you're hot cupcakes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that moment. So yes.
Very cool.
It's a good moment.
Well, all right. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go too. So we're kind of winding down. Maybe this is a good natural point because I do actually want to take some medicine and get some drink and go to sleep because I don't want to I can't be sick right now.
We don't want you to turn into Jinx.
Yes. All right. So, oh yeah. And I also love that one. Your problem is never knowing when to shut up. Your problem. Your problem is never knowing when to shut up, but I'm here to help you with that. I do love that. See this look on my face? This will always mean it's time to shut up.
And he starts to talk. She's
he starts to say something else. I do that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody who has been on the stream tonight. Thank you so much for the super chats and the comments. This was a fantastic, I guess we'll call it an opening discussion of everything here that's been in this. This has been great. And then everybody who is watching on replay, thank you as well. Especially the permanent home for this stream is over on the Table Talk channel. So if you're not, over there, I'll put the link right here. If you're watching on Heath's Geekverse, please do come over to the Table Talk channel and be sure you subscribe over there because ultimately the whole thing is migrating over there. I'm dual streaming right now, but the ultimate home will be over here on Table Talk. I'll turn the Heath's Geekverse chat private tomorrow morning. So please do come over here and be with us. Please do like the stream and also get it out there. So thank you, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Well, real quick, if there's any specific theme or topic that you want us to cover, put it in the comments, and then Heath will grab them off there and design or organize the next.
If we organize on the show again, yeah, that's good.
But put it in the comments so we have a record of it.
Yeah, that way, everybody can see it. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so